Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Thursday, February 5th, 2026 meeting of the Board of Carroll County Commissioners. As we always do, we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silent reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So first up on our agenda today, we have a grant approval to submit application and acceptance of award for FY26 courthouse security. Judge, please come forward. Approach the bench.
You've been waiting all day to say that.
Yeah, I have.
Morning.
Thank you for joining us.
And thanks for allowing me to come in early. I have a courtroom full of folks who are grateful also, so thank you. With me this morning also is Sixteen Cadell from IT in case you have any technical questions, but my request of the board this morning is for approval to allow us to submit a grant to the Administrative Office of the Courts, which will fund entirely the projects that we're asking to approve today. 2 security upgrades, one for an intercom upgrade for one of the judges' chambers and the other for mag locks to replace sort of an antiquated system of mag locks that we have on the door that don't function as well as they need to when we have a power outage. So we need locks that will secure the doors. When we run our fire drills, for example, we discovered that these mag locks don't operate optimally. So we applied for a grant, or want to apply for this grant to the Administrative Office of the Courts for $30,319.89. Won't cost the county anything, I'm pleased to tell you. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
This is the kind of stuff we like. No recurring costs, no money,
Yeah.
one-time funds, and so
Yes, yeah, it's always easier
I
to
guess I
come
can
over
move that
here.
the Board of Commissioners approve the submission of the FY26 courthouse security applications and accept the award.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Judge.
Thank you
Thank
again
you.
very much. Everybody have a good day, be safe.
You
You too.
too.
Okay.
Thank you.
So next we will move into the Priority Carroll segment of the agenda. Commissioner Krebs, would you like to lead us off this week?
Sure. Well, I had a very interesting week, fun week. I visited several places, and I went to Fairhaven, which I've been to many times before, but not in several years. They have a lot of improvements down there. Fairhaven is a continuing care retirement community in Sykesville. Been there since about 45 years. And their ownership changed a few years ago, and they got bought out by a larger company called Axe, and they have retirement communities all over the East Coast, from Pennsylvania down to Florida. And they have done some phenomenal improvements down there. I mean, it really, really was a beautiful place, and it's such a feather in our cap to have these beautiful facilities for our seniors to go to. So I got to tour that, understand about the needs of the continuing care retirement communities for our seniors, which our senior population is growing, and had a very nice visit down there. And that was what I did part of the day. Then I went up to Citizen Services, to the distillery building, and we looked at the Circle of Caring, the Homelessness Board, Carroll County's Continuum of Care, and that was explained to me. And then I got to meet all of the folks that work there and in the building upstairs, and learned a lot about what's coming up on the agenda today, so I don't have to ask more questions today, because I already asked them yesterday. So I enjoyed both those visits. I also want to go one more thing about Intergrace that I forgot about. Intergrace now acts. One thing that was interesting down there at Fairhaven, that it used to be a big dairy farm, the Beesman Dairy Farm, and the executive director down there actually gave me a book about it for my husband to read and tell me what it's all about. But it just talks about, it used to be a big farm, and they actually donated the farm of 300 and some acres for this facility. I think something similar like that happened with Carroll Lutheran Village. So they really left a legacy for the folks that they wanted to. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Carroll. Good morning, Carroll County. It's hard
hard to ignore what's taken place in Annapolis the last couple of weeks. We're going to hear more about that from our legislative liaison. But whether it's 287G or this redistricting, all very concerning developments. People of Carroll County should be concerned. What's particularly galling about a lot of those issues is to watch, outside advocacy groups that aren't even based in Maryland, rejoicing over some of these decisions and stating quite plainly that it's about time that they get to decide what counties like Carroll County do. And that should be a concern for everybody listening and watching, because we know best. Nobody within Carroll County should be happy about that, and nobody should be willing to accept those things, especially in light of the fact that, that's what elections are all about. So I hope people in Carroll County are paying attention to what's going on in Annapolis, because it affects us directly. And again, that's what elections are all about, and I hope people are paying attention as we get into the election season. And on that note, it's hard to ignore this issue of solar panels. I'm going to bring it up again. I think we're probably on day maybe 10 or 12 of virtually every solar panel in western and northern Maryland being covered in ice and snow. You don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar to figure out that solar panels don't work when they're covered in ice and snow. This board, as everyone's aware, prohibited solar on agricultural years ago. And we did that to protect agricultural land. But we also did that because we know they don't work. And as everybody sees their electric bills going sky high and doubling, anecdotally I'm hearing from people that they're doubling in some cases, you have to remind yourself why. There's not enough energy because we're relying on snow and ice covered solar panels. People need to remember that, again, as we go into an election season. And how did this all happen? Now the solution, now the good news is interesting. We're going to have, it's interesting. We're going to have this transmission line going through Carroll County, but it's not going to bring us any energy. It's going straight through Carroll County. So again, the issues aren't being addressed. They're not going to be solved by ice and snow covered solar panels that don't work. I wanted to mention it because there is a lot of talk about what's going on in Carroll County. We see other jurisdictions trying to fight this. We see other jurisdictions in other states now taking legal action to stop some of these projects on privately owned land. But it's important to note that this board didn't just do it to protect agricultural land. We did it because we know it doesn't work. And whether it's under the guise of community solar or not, it's not gonna help you with your electric bill. So I hope people are well aware of that, and unfortunately painfully aware of that right now as they watch some of these bills go sky high and everybody's using as much energy as they need to keep their houses warm, because we are just going through, I think, one of the coldest winters in 20 years. So just wanted to bring that up and make sure that people are aware of that. And when you hear us talking about this issue of solar, it's not just it's not just a one particular issue. It's a multitude of things that we know just don't work for Carroll County, and that's why we're sitting up here, to make sure that we are doing what's best for you and your families here in Carroll County. And that's all for me.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gordon?
Thank you. Good morning, Carroll County. Just have two brief comments I wanted to make. First and foremost, wanted to congratulate the Dr. Rose Mintz, president of Carroll Community College, and Wilson Bounds, owner and founder of Bounds Accounting and Tax Service. Both have joined the board of the Boys and Girls Club of Carroll County. Obviously, these two outstanding community leaders will add some additional diverse thoughts and ideas, and I think it's just absolutely fantastic to see how this organization continues to grow and the individuals that get behind it. Secondly, wanted to bring up real shortly, Carroll Arts Center is now hosting the Tevis College Arts Scholarship Award in honor of the late Dorothy Tevis, who was a champion of the arts in Carroll County. Each high school will be awarded a $1,000 scholarship to an outstanding student planning to pursue a college degree in the arts. Arts are defined to encompass vocal and instrumental music, music education, performance music theory, composition, art and art history, art education, creative writing, drama theater, media arts, film studies, dance photography, graphic design, costume design, architecture, and interior design and animation. I wanted to mention this because, as we all know, we're getting to that time of the year where scholarships are available not only through various organizations but also our state delegation. I wanted to make sure that people are aware to look out for the various scholarships for their kids. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'll piggyback the scholarships. Each school guidance office should have a newsletter that lists all the scholarships that they know about being available. So if you have a scholarship, get it to the school so the kids see it. And a lot of them rely on that list of where they apply and where they don't. And you're right, it is the season.
Yes.
We're meeting the environmental board this afternoon, which is we do once a year, and so it's always interesting, and we'll hear about some of the things they've done, some of the things they want to do. I was part of the point in time count to find homeless, and that's always a great day. And Carroll County, maybe because of the weather a little bit, seemed like this year they had more in facilities than out, but it's very interesting. We need to help homeless as much as we can. We have some veterans that are homeless, but what I found out the past 3 years doing this count, we have some homeless that desire to be homeless, and they're reach out for a little bit of help, but that's what they want to do, and some of them have, my gosh, their facilities, they're very handy with tools, and they create a nice shelter for themselves. But it was interesting. We had our cabinet meeting, which is always good, and we thank the staff for all the snow removal, and we got Public Works, we got facilities, we got the roads crews, we got the fleet, which I think we always forget the fleet, but I think they had to run out to the airport because of a broken down vehicle, so they were kind of important too. Went to the Boys and Girls Club breakfast, and congratulations to the new board members, but went to that in Annapolis. That was a great day, and my gosh, that one, there's some of us that were there, and he's a good guy, and like Carroll County seems to do, our student of the year or our person of the year ends up being youth of the year for the state lots of times.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's pretty awesome. The governor spoke, the lieutenant governor spoke, some senators spoke. It was a good breakfast, a good way to start the day. We all went out to VIP with Johnny O and some of his staff, and they're looking at a very aggressive project, and getting some money from the federal government, and that's one of the things, and I think Commissioner Krebs mentioned it earlier, not today, but earlier. This redistricting, we could lose him too, you know, so it's not just about the R's and the D's, and I was at an event last week, I guess. We lost Roscoe Bartlett after 20 years in 2012 because the state redistricted and bumped him out. So it's not a new thing in Annapolis, but that doesn't mean it's any smarter, right? And again, thanks for the snow. I'm going to Taste of Maryland for agriculture tonight. That'll be a fun event. Unfortunately, because of the snow, wrestling's moved around, so I might get there late. Next week's a busy week in Annapolis. District 5 has their meeting. Well, actually, District 5 and 42 have their reception for anybody from the county on Monday night. I think 5:30 to 7:30, I think. But if you haven't seen it, look into it. It's a good night in Annapolis. Then Wednesday would be Mako stuff, the State of the State speech and luncheon, and then more Mako with a reception that evening. So a busy week for us in Annapolis this week. Always a busy week for those guys. I want to mention, you mentioned solar, and common sense doesn't matter. A past commissioner called and was concerned about one in Manchester, and I don't think he set a height, but the screening trees are 4 or 5 feet high to screen 15 feet high. And the one judge who probably knows law but doesn't have a clue about construction, one of her comments was 10-foot trees won't survive and you can't plant them, and it's bullshit. They survive fine. I've planted 25-foot trees that survive. Now, it costs more, and these guys want the cheapest possible, but to me, to say that it's going to screen, and Chris Hine gets into this, it's going to screen in 10 years. But to my opinion, if you're going to do this near the residents, it should screen the day you put the trees in. But that common sense doesn't matter. So thank you, Commissioner, for calling in. And if you're listening, you got the answer. And we don't like it any more than you do. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Kyler. I want to thank all of my friends up here, as always, for their service, their dedication, their comments. I just have 2 quick things myself today. So first of all is to go off of what Commissioner Kyler was talking about. I was honored to join my colleagues, along with Congressman Olszewski, on his visit to Carroll County last week to Deeds of Faith and the Veterans Independence Project. And I'm incredibly grateful that the Congressman has been able to secure so much federal funding for local causes and nonprofits. And I think it's probably important to note that just because political positions don't always align doesn't mean that there isn't common ground that everyone can gather together upon. And we talk about the state of our political discourse and society in general, but days and events and moments like we had last week are proof that we as Americans still have far more in common than we might otherwise believe, and that those are the bonds that we need to focus on so that genuine disagreements don't become irreparable divisions. Last week, I also had the opportunity to attend the regular meeting of the Commission on Aging and Disabilities. That is a phenomenal group with dedicated members, and in addition to their usual work at the meeting, the Commission is currently working on reorganizing their membership requirements to ensure the greatest possible level of representation possible from across the county. So more news on that, as well as the vacancies on that commission, will be coming soon, and I'll make sure to share those, as we certainly want more citizens to join and participate. And now I do believe that Commissioner Krebs has a proclamation for us for National Marriage Week, and I believe we have some guests. Why don't you please come on down to the front, Commissioner?
Thank you. I'm so pleased that I get to,
Yes, please. Yeah.
I'm
yes,
pleased that I
please.
get to do this proclamation today. It's so special for me. You can bring your group up with you if you will.
Sit here a minute?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Come on up.
Should I sit here and not worry about the...
You can all come up.
Okay. Y'all come on, guys. Be
Don't be
brave.
shy. First, I want to thank you. I'm going to read the proclamation in a minute, but I want to thank you for all the work you guys do, not just for Marriage Week, but for all the things you do in our community that help our children in our schools, talk about marriage, talk about safety, talk about making good decisions, and all that stuff leads up to good citizens. And it's phenomenal work that you do. Started by your dad and you're following in his footsteps, and you've had so many folks helping you out. But do you guys want to say something before I read the proclamation?
Thank you, Commissioner, and good morning, Commissioners and staff, and to our Carroll County friends joining online as well. Thank you as leaders for your longstanding support of strengthening marriages and families in our county, but also in our region. Your leadership helps shape conversations that influence the health and stability of our community. When leaders prioritize strong, healthy relationships, it helps build a foundation that benefits children, which is why we started, because of kids, families, and the overall well-being of Carroll County and our region. We truly appreciate your commitment to those you serve, and we are honored to serve as a local resource for building healthy, strong relationships and to work alongside leaders who value that foundation. My name is Amy Guilford, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Marriage and Relationship Education Center. And joining me today are our co-founder, Bill McKenna, one of our marriage liaisons, Bill Thomas, and our student facilitator, Robert Johnson, who has been kicking up a storm in the schools. For over 20 years, MREC has served our community by providing practical, research-informed relationship education to students, couples, and families, and community leaders. Our work focuses on prevention. We equip people with communication, conflict resolution, and commitment skills that help relationships grow stronger and families thrive. As we approach National Marriage Week, February 7th to 14th, we are here to celebrate this important initiative and to launch the Maryland Marriage Challenge as a local opportunity for couples to engage in a national movement. This year's theme is Together with Purpose, and it encourages couples to build strong, intentional, and lasting relationships grounded in shared goals and commitment. So people in Carroll County and beyond can come to our website, mrecenter.org, and get involved in the Marriage Challenge. And it's free. It fits every budget. So National Marriage Week is part of a national effort focused to strengthen marriages and build strong families. Participation in this project benefits Carroll County residents because all win when relationships are healthy. And across the country, we are seeing a renewed interest in building sustainable lifelong marriages. You might not always hear it. Sometimes the headlines are a little crazy, and that's what gets the headlines, the problem. But the truth is that there is a renaissance going on in the marriage world. There is an uptick of those who are seeking to form, sustain healthy marriages and relationships. So during this week, the Maryland Marriage Challenges invites people to invest intentionally in their relationships through small, meaningful actions. These simple steps help strengthen connection, commitment, and the idea of living together with purpose. So thank you again as leaders for your leadership, for your support of families across our community. And we are grateful at MREC for the opportunity to continue to serve for over 20 years now as a trusted community resource supporting healthy relationships and strong families.
Thank you. Bill, do you want to say something?
I think she says it all, really.
Well, you started this, and I remember when you started it 20 years ago, and what a difference it's made.
Talking to you about it very well, Commissioner. And just to see it grow over the years, what started with couples has gone into our schools, and it's just growing like it. We just appreciate your support. As we grow, our community grows, our county grows, and as marriages grow, it just has a strong effect on future relationships. And we're trying to build a culture that cares about families and marriages, care about relationship building. So again, we just thank you and appreciate your standing up with us to endorse and build strong marriages and families. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson?
Well, I am, didn't know if I was going to be able to speak here. Deeply appreciative of the heart of the Carroll County community and MREC, being from a broken home and starting my life out with a rough start. It was great to move into a place where there was somebody already on the ground working for families and for the kids already. And moving into Taneytown, where I moved, I found right away that the neighborhood needed something. And so when I went into the schools immediately, the response from the kids and the need for healthiness in their lives and relationships, building, I'm just so grateful and thankful to be a part of that and that you guys have the heart to make that possible. Because I've been in a lot of states. I've lived in over 8 states and been to 14 schools before I finished high school. No other school have I ever been a part of had information coming in to help me or my family make healthy decisions. And so I'm so thankful and grateful that you guys are a part of that, and we are too.
And Mr. Thomas, you come to the mic. Just use the mic so they can hear you.
My role, I'm one of 3 pastoral liaisons. So we connect with the local churches I serve right now at Calvary in Finksburg, Gamber, United Methodist Church, but we realize that strong marriages build strong families, and strong families build strong communities. And so it's a great project to be a part of, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. But thank you, too, for your support in saying that's the goal of Carroll County, be a place where families, relationships are strong and healthy and growing.
And you're a former teacher, too,
I
right?
used to teach at Westminster High School, yes.
That's right.
Thank you, and I'll tell you, if there's one thing that we could do in the state, in our county, in our country, is this, is healthy relationships, strong families. It's the basis for everything, and we don't talk about it enough. We talk about mental health. We talk about all the problems that we have, but this is the basis for why we have some of those problems. And if we just get back to, sometimes call it back to basics. But I want to thank our school system, they're not here, for letting you into the schools and welcoming you and seeing how healthy it is to have that in our schools.
Yes, we have a memorandum of understanding. So right now, we are able to teach about 2,000 students a year healthy relationship skills. So it's an amazing opportunity, and we are grateful for the school system partnership that makes that possible.
Well, we're very grateful that they allow that because it works, and we thank you. This is, I guess, I think is the basis for what we need in our country and everywhere, just to remind ourselves every day. So I am got a proclamation here for Marriage Week, which is this week from February 7th, ending on Valentine's Day, very appropriately on February 14th. I'm saying that for all the men to remember that Valentine's Day is coming up. Don't forget.
Saturday, February
And it's on
14th.
Saturday this year, which is unusual, so you can act extra special.
He's wearing her beautiful red.
Right. So whereas marriage is an honored, important, and valued component of strong families and communities across Maryland and our nation. And whereas Maryland is a valuable institution for those who choose marriage and is the foundation of many strong families in Maryland. And whereas, based on a wealth of academic research, married people tend to have healthier lifestyles, live longer, and have more satisfying sexual relationships, have more wealth and economic assets, and have children that tend to do better academically and emotionally. And whereas divorce costs, financial and relational, have a significant negative impact on our society. But by supporting and encouraging strong marriages, every unit of investment brings a positive, multifold return into our society. And whereas marriage deserves the support and encouragement of all members of society for its ability to uplift individuals and children, because it provides a framework for positive and supportive role models for children. Whereas in Carroll County and beyond, marriage should be honored by all for the good of all. Now, therefore, we, the Board of Carroll County Commissioners, do hereby proclaim February 7th, 2025 through February 14th, there's a typo in there, it says 2026 through February 14th, 2026 as Marriage Week, and recommend that the citizens of Carroll County recognize the significance and contribution that strong marriages and families have on our society. Adopted this 5th day of February 2026 by the Carroll County Board of Commissioners, signed by all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you guys come forward, we'll get a picture.
Yeah, let's do a picture.
Anybody have any
Yeah,
comments?
if-
You wanna- go ahead.
And I want to thank you guys for all you do. I love your emails. I don't know that all of them, but many of them start out, "Dear friend." I love that. And I love what you do. We've been to a couple events, but I've got to assure you, after 53 years, I'm not sure I could coast and Rhonda still keep me, so I value what you
We have a couple opportunities coming up to enrich that. Keep it strong.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, did you want to say something, Bill?
I've had an idea for many, many years, which I've shared with different commissioners. You know how when you travel into a county, it says, "Welcome to this county," because la, 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 la. Wouldn't it be nice if different locations in Carroll County where people came into Carroll County and the billboard would say, "Welcome to Carroll County, where strong marriages and families are part of our environment."
It's beautiful.
Just a thought.
Yeah. Thank
Put
you
that
for
on
the
the
thought.
billboard,
Yeah.
Bill.
Partner with Economic Development, come up with a billboard.
My guy, boy.
Tell me where to go. You got to
Take them off.
up there? Okay.
Oh, we're going to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely, sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
I have to say, once in a while, I will wear a shirt to work that is not white or not blue. And the commissioners never let me hear the end of it, so I want to applaud you on that shirt.
You're the guy. Oh, thank you very much. My wife said, "You're gonna wear that?" Or you it's me.
That's funny.
Well, thank you very much for that. Up next, we have our legislative update with Pam Meister. Good morning, Pam. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you all today?
Good morning.
Well, very spring today. I like the defiance of the 10-degree weather.
It's true. I kind of do that year round, bringing the groundhog down. Just kidding. I'm a summer fan and a spring fan, so I just pretend. I'm wearing closed-toed shoes though, so that's an improvement because I do wear sandals in the winter sometimes, but don't tell.
Impressive.
Okay, so there's a lot going on in Annapolis, as you know. Last night, and I apologize for how late it was, but I'm trying to keep things as up-to-date as possible. I'm going to aim to get over my perfectionism and send you earlier updates on Wednesday so you have more time to review them. But I sent you the first of a new format of legislative updates that I'm going to be sharing with you using our new Engagify legislative tracking system. And we can incorporate a lot of information. In these reports, you'll see more county snapshots added to many of the bills in the week ahead. But the goal of these reports is to keep you informed of everything that we're monitoring, and there's well over 200 bills right now. Many of them MACO is monitoring, some of them they are not. And you'll notice that when MACO is monitoring and their legislative committee has taken a position that's indicated on the report along with kind of where the bill is in the process, letting you know if we have, any really important information, it'll be flagged in there that you should kind of keep in mind, but you'll have a synopsis as well as where it is in terms of committee process, which is really where we are now in Annapolis, in the midst of all the committee hearings, taking a deeper look at issues, and then weighing in on amendments, and not just kind of what's going to pass, but what's it going to look like. So everything that you're reading may not be on face value what's happening in Annapolis, and I know many of you know this, but sometimes I share things also for the public who may not be as informed about all the nitty-gritty of how things take place down there. What I'm hoping we can do through these reports that I'm providing you is save some time here on Thursdays so that I don't read them all to you, but that you can bring to me the issues that you do want to discuss in open session amongst yourselves or with me, or just to clarify so the public has a better understanding of those bills. I can read you all of those, but there's a lot that's going on. What you'll see next week, and I'm going to try to get to you probably 2 updates this week, one in a few days and one right before, so it's updated, is more how this impacts Carroll County, or how it could impact Carroll County, not just what you can kind of gauge from the General Assembly website and what we've pulled to track. So if there's an issue in particular that you don't see on this list, let me know and I will find it if it exists. Some bills have not yet been dropped. One of the things that we keep hearing over and over again is how unprecedented it's been this year compared to other years with the number of bills that have been dropped later than earlier. I still think we have quite a few. If you looked at the charts I shared last night, we have, as of then, 670 bills in the Senate, 989 in the House. We're tracking about 200 at the moment that have some kind of impact. And I also flag those bills that our state delegation have introduced that could potentially just bring awareness. We may not even have an impact to Carroll County, but I think it's important to know what they're doing in case you want to weigh in on those as well. What's coming ahead in the next few days is just the bill introduction deadlines in the House and the Senate. So anything that's going to get introduced that isn't going to go through rules we'll know about in the next few days. And I will make sure to flag anything that I think is important, but I always invite you to let me know. If there's something on your mind, let me know. We will make sure we get it in there if there's a specific bill as well. And just because MACO takes a position, it doesn't mean that Carroll County is always going to be aligned, or there may be nuances. So please do let me know if there's something on your mind so that we can weigh in. We sent something in last week, as you know, on highway user revenues. We've talked internally about a couple of other issues and chosen not to weigh in for different reasons. But if there's something you want to talk about in this forum, let me know so that we can do so in the most efficient and effective way possible. In addition to just giving you an update on where the process is, there's a few bond initiatives that I know you've been briefed on previously, but that did get introduced right now. One is the Carroll County Youth Services Bureau. They're looking at doing some HVAC and other improvements, and there's a bond bill request for $295,000. There's a Springboard Community Services Family Support Center request for $175,000, and Westminster Elementary School is looking to do a new electronic sign. So there's a $35,000 request there. On top of that, we have our bond bill that you're aware of that we've put into place that we'll keep monitoring, and that's pretty standard every year. And the unpaid property tax bill has been reintroduced from the last couple of years. This year, we're hoping we'll get traction. And we'll have a hearing coming up on those very soon. So you'll be seeing some testimony for your approval coming your way on those bills. Let's see what else I have my notes on here. Some of the big issues outside of those that you have on your priority list that I'm seeing over and over again are obviously redistricting, which you've brought up, which right now we're just waiting to see what happens in the Senate. You know, I'm sure you've read in the news and you've heard that we're not so sure if anything will happen in the Senate, but there's, you know, a lot of pressure to do things. You know, we've had discussions with some of you already about your various opinions on this, but if you do want to weigh in, let me know. You know, this could be an issue that you just want to watch and see, but it may be something that you want to put on the record where Carroll County aligns on this issue, regardless of if it takes traction or not. You know, for the people listening, it's not the typical time to address these issues. It's, you know, in between the 10-year time frame. So that alone is something to consider. And again, what will change with representation and what that would mean for Carroll County definitely is something to think about. So that's one issue that's being raised. Obviously.
While you're on that, that's a good example. MACO is not taking a position on it because they consider it political, not local control in counties, and they encouraged, it was a lot of discussion, and they encourage any counties that feel strongly to comment individually.
Yes.
But they made a case that evidently influenced the legislative committee to stay no position.
Right. They felt like it was going to be too divided, and that would not have represented MACO as a whole. There were conversations about taking, you know, different positions based on different groups within MACO. But I think it's important, just while we're on the MACO topic, and I've kind of alluded to this, to make sure that when Carroll County has a position that's strong, aligned or not aligned with MACO, that we're always making the points about why and how something impacts Carroll County. I know that last year we weighed in on some more issues than we had previously, and I've gotten really good feedback from that. And I think that's going to help move priorities forward when there are things that do matter a lot and are high priorities for you as commissioners and the county government as a whole. So just keep that in mind. And on an issue like this, you know, everyone weighing in, I think, does make an impact in letting them know. Even if it's not a strong position, sometimes these letters that we can send in can just say, just FYI, here's how it impacts Carroll County. Take this for, you know, what it does for you in terms of making decisions, and it doesn't always have to be like a hard press. So keep that in mind.
Commissioner Kyler, was that a motion to have a letter drafted in opposition to redistricting?
We surely can if everybody. Yeah, we should.
I mean, keep in mind, for some of the counties, they're sending that message to their delegation. Our delegation is 100% with us on this. So I don't know if it's going to, we can say we're against it, we could do that. But again, some of the counties, they need to give direction to their own delegation. Our delegation is on the front line of this.
And the delegation did a great job with this, voting and talking. I got to see Delegate Stanko's comments, and he kept it from being political and showed why it's not a good decision. He did a good job. So, yeah, they're fighting for it too. And I don't know whether our letter means much or not.
I mean,
You know?
if you have time to write, I mean, you send it to the committee itself. But
Yeah.
if it's not instructive to our delegation,
Yep.
well, in this one, because they're there. And I listened to one of the things they're doing this year more is posting the actual debate on the floor, the different people, what they're saying. And I think it's been very good. So you can hear, instead of hearing something written down, you hear what they're saying. And you mentioned Delegate Sanko. He was excellent. And Delegate Tomlinson made an excellent point. I want to remind people here, when we did redistricting for the county, which is for our seats, we could have split it up and been, I mean, some of our towns are Democrat. Westminster's all Democrats, Sykesville, I think pretty much all. We didn't try to split it down the middle and separate things. We did what was best for the community, and that's what we did. So I say we practice what we preach. And he made that point of when we did redistricting here, it could have been very different, and it would have maybe done some things, we would have maybe had some different outcomes, I don't know. But we did not do that. We did what was best for the community, keeping communities together, and that's what they're asking them to do. So I think we do put our money where our mouth is and practice what we preach, and they pointed that out, and I was very proud of the comments that they and others made.
Ms.
Oh,
Wyndham,
that's
I
great.
believe you had something to say?
Just that, if the board chooses to write the letter, I think it should include, we support our delegation in their opposition
Yep.
to, so that they know.
Yes.
That we know their position, and that, that we're backing them up.
Yes, and I think that's a great idea, because often, even when Commissioner Guerin was talking about Annapolis, we need to remind ourselves, our guys down there are fighting on our side of this. So it's not like.
Absolutely.
And they do that all the time, so I just got to remind the public that our representatives that are down for us are on our side.
Absolutely, and I think
Side front.
We have a unified front of common sense and sanity.
And that's exactly, my point of saying, let me know what you want to convey when we're talking about an issue. It doesn't always have to be we're taking a position. It could be just we support what's going on or how we're being represented. And just while we're on this topic, it's a good time just to make this a public reminder. When 3 or more of you agree, I can support you in writing letters as a consensus from the board. But if there's a time where you don't, we can do individual letters. But when we can in open session have you make votes and motions on letters, that's great. If not, we make sure to take care of it appropriately, so we have that on the record as well. But if there's something, that you do want to raise as a group, let me know. If there's something you want to individually tackle, that's fine. And I want to make sure, and that's why I circulate the drafts to you, that we are hitting the points that are clear, and that I'm not missing any key points, because you may know something that I obviously don't at times. And I want to make sure that we are reflecting that, so that we're coming off not just, as a template or something when we're weighing in on an issue, but that we're being, as aware and effective as we can in speaking up with a purpose.
And the one thing that after listening to some of the debate yesterday, I know that the proponent of the bill, the committee chair that was pushing it, somebody said he spoke for 40 minutes about it, and mostly it was about Trump, Trump, Trump. And I kept thinking to myself, I guess I learned this when I was a kid, 2 wrongs don't make a right. It seems to be all about the federal, we got to get back at them. Well, that doesn't mean it's best for Maryland. It doesn't mean it's best for our counties. And I think that's the point that we need to keep making. Just because you don't like Trump and he's doing something somewhere else doesn't mean that Maryland should not do the right thing, just like we did in Carroll County. So.
Very well said. So did we have a motion to move forward with this letter? Was that a motion,
Sure.
All right, so we have a.
That's what you want.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, couple of seconds. Dinner must have been good last night. Any further discussion?
I will point out, and again, I understand sometimes, the notion of a strongly worded letter sometimes doesn't get you anything, but I've sat here long enough to know that we have made those decisions in the past and decided to create some correspondence in support or against something, and in the end, we're glad we did that, because sometimes that will, further the discussion, and oftentimes, in particular, the citizenry wants to make sure they know where the board stands. And 9 times out of 10, we've been glad we've written those letters, because they've been useful. They've become useful, and sometimes they've sparked additional discussion and some actions. So I support the idea of doing that.
And please add in, I think, the comments that Ms. Wyndham mentioned about we support our delegation.
Absolutely.
And it's not just in what the outcome is, but we're doing this in between, like, we could redo our districts, we could redo everything. Do you want that to happen all over the state of Maryland? And the answer is no.
Well, what I'll do is I'll circulate an email to all of you today, just inviting you to, as a reminder, let me know any thoughts you have before I draft the letter so that I can make sure I hit anything that you have time to think about when you reflect on this issue, and then I'll get you a draft and we'll go from there.
And we have a communications person that's very good, too, that can help with that.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Take a vote.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Let me go back to the Bambi bill.
Bambi bill?
Yeah.
We can talk about the Bambi bill.
So you mentioned about I think you brought that up. With MACO, well, some of the issues, and I was mentioning this earlier, it'd be nice to know when they say with amendments, what exactly, I don't need to read the exact words, but what are the issues they want to be covered, to either taken in or put out of a bill? And like it'll say with amendments, but that way it'll give us an idea of what we're lobbying for, if we talk to folks or whatever, which things are problematic, that are agreed upon that are problematic, that they already see, and that we might agree with. But with the Bambi bill, one of the things has to do with predictability from with developers. I don't disagree with that. I think the process has become long and wieldy. What we need to point out, it's not because of us. It's not because of the counties and the locals. It's because of the ever-changing state rules. You look at stormwater management. I mean, it's huge. It's changing constantly. Somebody starts a development, it could change next year. It could and it's a big deal. I know a lot of our towns don't want to grow because of the costs of upgrading wastewater treatment plants and with water. So it's not that they don't want to do it, but it's become such a big deal now to bring those kinds of projects on. It's a challenge, and it takes a long time. So we need to make sure we point out it's not the counties that are necessarily the problem. It's the constantly changing state rules and reforestation, and there's a million things. But you add all those together, and it makes it tough. So we need to remind them of some of those items, and I think our staff can point them out as good. And maybe we should put some of that stuff in a letter. I've also talked to the Maryland Home Builders folks and told them they need to be pointing that out too. You know, they want affordable housing, and that we all want affordable housing. It's almost impossible to do that in the state with all the mandates they put on just the basic little townhouse that you built. So we got to remind them that they're a part of this. They're a part of this problem, and some of their solutions, like the Silver and Starter Home and dictating zoning, it's not going to change one thing. I really don't believe that it's going to make these houses any more affordable with all these other things already that are included in it.
I think that it would be really useful to have a letter that's very specific to any points we can share with Carroll County impacts with real numbers or real data if we can pull this together. One of the things that's been talked about over and over again is that this is just a priority from the governor that we've looked at now for a couple of years, and we're trying to, MACO is trying to, with this bill, do something that's more palatable, but I think with an open mind to knowing that it's not perfect or ideal either. And I definitely think this is an area, from what I'm understanding and kind of the different conversations that I've been in, that something's going to happen and Carroll County is going to be influential here. So we have a real opportunity to be heard because we are at the table, even though we're not one of the largest counties. And a lot of your points, I think, are really well made and valid. So, whether you want to make a motion to do a letter on this one now or later, I do think this is an issue that I think, to Commissioner Garen's point, would be really great to have your viewpoints on the record.
Okay, I agree with you on that. I will make a motion in a second. But a couple other things I was just thinking about that are not directly related to the bill. But the state has pulled back a lot. We were talking the other day about how many, we grew a lot in the 90s in Carroll County, 80s and 90s. We built a lot of houses and we built a lot of schools. Well, those schools are getting old and they need to be modernized. Well, the state has not increased their amount of state funding for just regular stuff in all these years. So it leaves the counties with doing all these modernizations. Well, you can only afford to do so many things. So the state has not kept up with roads. I mean, we look at roads that they promised for years. They haven't kept up with school construction. We need to remind them, and then they push off the operating costs of schools and pensions and other things. So it really, I know the governor complains that the president's pushing stuff down on the states. Well, he's doing that and more to the counties. And we need to point those things out because that's why you resist, when schools are always overcrowded, you resist more development because you know what happens. And it's just what comes first, the chicken or the egg. So they need to be reminded of their responsibility in some of these things and why there is sometimes resistance because of the situations that don't always get funded, whether it's an addition that all-day pre-K, all-day kindergarten, all those things cost the counties money, and the state sometimes pays for it and sometimes they don't.
And there are a lot of shifts between last year and currently proposed for this year and looking out into the out years, as you referenced, to the counties that I think are very important to make sure that we speak up on. I know MACO is definitely advocating against a lot of those shifts or trying to minimize them where we can, but I think that as a county, Carroll County should, and I'd like to work with the budget office and all of you to make sure that we're accurately depicting what those costs reflect and what that means. But there are a lot of things in the BRFA as well as just individual bills this year, and it happens every year, but it's more this year and last year than I've seen in recent years at least, that are getting shifted to local governments for the reason that you described. And I don't know how much it will change, but I think the more we can articulate what the kind of trickle down and domino effect is of some of these decisions, the better, because at least maybe we can mitigate some of the harm. And, one of the things that I'm seeing, there's, conversations about the budget and looking at blueprint. And there was a presentation yesterday with Vicki Gruber, and we have another one coming up next week. And she showed this chart, and basically, the shifts of what money was set aside for blueprint, everybody knows, was inadequate, but it's really drastic when you start to see where we're getting. We're getting to this cliff with that issue. We just talked about the highway user revenue cliff. Definitely school construction is another one that's coming up over and over again. So, I think you're spot on with these issues and their impact on local governments. And I think that we should figure out the priorities that we want to make sure we're addressing, because we can attack all of them, but I think the ones that matter most or have the biggest impact, we should weigh in on and definitely make sure that we're writing letters and possibly even testifying at some of the hearings, whether it's just me or some of you coming down, depending on how strongly you feel about these issues, because they are going to come down when you work on the county budgets and when the school system looks at theirs. There's so much related to the school system, and a lot's getting kind of bundled up in just kind of snippets, like little summary words that have a much bigger impact than really how it's being articulated if you don't understand what's going on in more detail behind the scenes.
The problem is they shift the costs, but they continue to keep the control over the issue.
Yes.
Whether it's teacher pensions or whether it's the schools, they don't just say, hey, you're going to pay more. They say, you're going to pay more, and here's what you're going to do with it. And we have no control over it. And at the end of the day, if we got better outcomes, you might say that's okay, but we don't get better outcomes because of it.
Right.
Because one size does not fit all. And that's, I think, the message. You look at Blueprint, we're like in year 6? We're pretty far along, there's a lot of new money that's gone into it. Are our outcomes getting better? And the answer is, in most cases, no. So that's the question. Okay, is all of this stuff making things better, county by county? It certainly hasn't helped us. I don't know that it's helped the ones it was supposed to help, like Baltimore City, either, because they haven't really had any tremendous gains. But again, they want to keep control and tell you what to do, whether it's zoning or whether it's even pensions. It's their plan. They run it. They tell you what it is, but we have to pay for it. Gives you no options. So on all of those things, if they gave you some control back, it would be different, but they don't.
Right.
And it's not. We're not moving forward. We're moving actually backwards. And that's what we don't disagree on the end game. We want to fund our schools. We want to have our kids have great education, but they're actually tying our hands to doing that. With their good ideas, it don't necessarily work the same. And also, even with Bambi, I understand the problem that they're trying to solve, and we want housing, but they've made it problematic, and so they need to help too. And
So with regard to that, if we have been this board has been trying to work with both the Department of Housing and Community Development and MDE to point out those points of contention, where you have such tremendous requirements for X, stormwater management, it doesn't matter, fill in a blank, and yet you want affordable housing, and you can't have it both ways. So I think if the board is interested, we do have those already, those talking points somewhat in the bag, and And I think we could point that out yet again to the, well, now, not only to the two departments, but to the General Assembly, and let them know that, we're in support of affordable housing, but that its goals are difficult at a minimum with those kinds of constraints.
And listen, I've watched a lot of those initiatives come through over the last 20 years, and individually, they sound good. Reforestation of forests, stormwater management, sprinklers, I could go on forever, charging stations, and they'll have a fiscal note, it's only this, it's only that. But you add those up, and it becomes this.
Right.
And all of that becomes more cost on your housing. So I think they have to look at that and say, is the juice worth the squeeze? That doesn't mean you get rid of it all, but you go back, we talked about reforestation the other day, it's $50,000 an acre. Okay, that's a lot of money if you're putting 4 houses on an acre. It's another $10,000, $12,000 at least, and you can't use it, for a home. If you take the 4 and you put 4 houses, that's if you're using.
It doesn't work that way. It's
Well,
not how many acres the houses are, it's how many acres of forestation.
Right, no, I know that, if it's a forested lot, if it's a lot that has forestation on it, you have to replace it. But those things all add up to the cost of housing. And they need to be relooked at, because individually, they get a bill passed, they get an environmental score that sounds good and it looks good, and they just, sprinklers sounded like a great idea many years ago. We're the only state in the country except California, and when you look at California and you compare yourselves, we don't want to be like California. No other state requires that. Is it nice sometimes? Maybe. Are there costs involved? There's a lot of water damage because of sprinklers that burst, and especially during this time of cold. So okay, I've never lived in a sprinklered house. I don't know that that's a top priority for people. They certainly could sprinkler if they choose. That's now a mandate, which adds to the cost of housing. So we just got to point some of this stuff out. I didn't realize we were the second state in the country that mandated it. And maybe because of California with their fires, maybe they should have it. But is that, again, they all add up, and that needs to be pointed out. You can't build an affordable home with all these things that they want, that we have to do.
Well, I definitely think you have raised a lot of great points, and some of them I have on my radar that we're definitely going to weigh in on if given consent from the board. And if there's something that we haven't already addressed, let's talk and make sure that I get them and we circulate them to the board so we can kind of say what the goal is, what we're trying to articulate, whether it's a specific piece of legislation or, similar to redistricting, we support efforts by the delegation. And I'm happy to help with as many as I can to make sure that you're being heard and that we are making these points clearly and being as influential and effective as we can in session. And then outside of session, to Roberta's point, there's so much work that the departments do, and I want to make sure that we support them as well, because a lot of what happens in the interim in terms of framing where things are going. So we'll get through session and chime in and weigh in where we can, and then we'll make sure that we are, as Carroll County always has been, continuously in conversations on the issues that we need to move forward, that we can shape some of the bills maybe more than we have in the past. I'm happy to help in that as well.
And both the bills, Bambi bill and also the Silver and Starter home bill, have some of the same issues in there. And one of the things that developers want, the predictability, and I get that, is because time is money. They buy a piece of property.
Right.
It takes 5 years to develop it. Well, you've got all this investment. So time is money to them, so I understand their issue as well. But, so they're interconnected, both these bills.
And I'd like to make a point. The Bambi bill, we focus so much on that. Is it a bill? Does it even have a sponsor? MACO cannot introduce bills.
Yeah, it does. I have to look up the bill number, but
So it's on your list with a sponsor?
I think so, yeah. It should be.
Okay.
It should be. Yeah, that as well as the Silver Home. So we have bills that we can
Silver
take
Homes
positions
is
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have those. They should all be on that list. And I'll send you a follow-up on these particular issues, like to make sure you have links to just those bills, because I know it's like 100 pages literally that I sent you last night for the ones that are priority. And one of the things that I'm really excited about with this new system is we can prioritize things that we want to be looking at more closely. So I might have 100, 200 bills, 300 bills, 500 by the end that we're tracking, but we could have 30, 40 that are really top priority for you all that we are going to maybe be more active in, and I can flag them and just give you reports on those as well and make sure we're doing more in-depth analysis and work with the departments to answer some of your questions that I may not have yet in terms of how this actually is impacting Carroll County or would if passed. So, that's something that I will shape as well based on these topics and circulate that so you have it. And not to waste a lot of time on this at the moment, but you do have links so that you can look and view things in the system, and I can have individual reports even for each of you. So I can do a general report, but if there's something that you're particularly interested in and we talk about it, I can put those criteria together and just automate getting you reports on things you're interested in. So my goal is to keep you as informed on as much or as little as you want to know about Annapolis, individually and as a group, and making sure that your voices are heard. And, this system also is communicating across all the departments. So all the department heads and different designees in their department have access to Engagify, and they are looking and flagging bills for me as well and weighing in and giving us feedback. So we have a much better system in place than last year, that we're ironing out the kinks so that it's as efficient and effective as possible, but so that we can get questions answered about how this impacts Carroll County, if at all, and give you more informed information so we can make decisions better about what to speak up on in Annapolis, or what we just are monitoring and looking at. So that's what I'm trying to achieve there. One other issue, which I am trying to pull up, but I haven't yet, here it is, that I just wanted to make sure you're looking at on the list, is Senator Reedy and West's bill about the sale of Shamrock Farms to Carroll County. Just know that's on your list too, if you have any thoughts on that. It's been assigned a committee, but not a hearing yet. And I am going to, as I mentioned earlier, send you some drafts on the legislation for the bills that you all are pioneering this year, which is only a couple this year. But if there's anything else that you see that you want me to flag on that hot list, let me know.
And one from me, I just saw it the other day, and I don't know what the number is offhand, but Senator Reedy, I think, is talking about a bill that would prevent surveyors from entering property prior to a power line project being formally declared or something like that. I'm not quite sure what the number is, but if you want, I can try to find where I found that and get that to you.
Yes, I will take a look.
So,
Thank you.
I hate to do this to you. So since you mentioned Shamrock Farms, there's a lot of people paying close attention to that particular issue. They're well aware of where we are with it now. But could you just take a minute then to describe the bill you just referenced? It's not discussing the county buying the property. It's not discussing any particular sale. It's trying to restrict.
It's prohibiting the Maryland Stadium Authority from selling, transferring, or disposing of Shamrock Farms, except under certain conditions, and authorizing the county commissioners to purchase Shamrock Farms on or before July 1, 2029. Pulling open the bill. See if there's anything else really important to note.
I mean, if that covers the gist of it, I just wanted
That's
to.
the gist.
I just wanted to provide people with that
Yeah.
public service announcement regarding Shamrock Farms, because there is a acute amount of interest in
Yes.
what's going on down there. That was it. So.
Okay, yeah, that's the gist.
And we go back to, I was going to make a motion that we, and I'm not sure what the timing of this should be, if the bills are dropped yet, but make a motion that we send a letter, 2 letters, one on the Bambi bill, one on Silver and Starter Home, and articulating some specific concerns and I guess quantifying what we think some of the problems are that need to be solved.
Okay.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. And Pam, I apologize, I misspoke. I'm sorry, but
Go ahead.
oh, so the thing with the forbidding of surveyors, it's during hunting season. I apologize. Not
Okay.
before the project is declared, but while hunting season is going on. I apologize for the confusion.
And
it's
speaking
okay.
of hunting season, I'm sorry.
And you mentioned the presentation we got on the budget, and I did get her backup from her discussion, and I'll flip that to everybody.
Oh, what Mako circulated? The PDF that Mako circulated? Yeah, I can send that out with everything
Okay.
else so that
Yeah,
it's,
if you want to flip
Yep.
it to all of us, including Ted.
absolutely. Yeah, so just so that you know what's coming, when Vicki Gruber gave her presentation, she highlighted certain points that she felt were more specific to local governments. So while you probably can see the whole report if you've taken a look on the state website, this is just some things that she thought were particularly worth looking at for local governments. So I'll circulate that today along with everything else that I've promised. And if there's anything else that comes up between now and next week, just reach out. You have my cell phone, my email. I've been going with Commissioner Kyler to Annapolis on Wednesdays, and this coming week, he's going to attend the State of the State, and I am also going to join him. We're going to go to the Legislative Committee meeting for MACO, and we've been meeting with some of the state delegation. So we're trying to make sure that we're being present and seen, and can go down other times as well if something comes up that's necessary. We're in communication all the time. I'm in communication all the time with people down there. So we are just doing our best to monitor all of that's happening, and I'm wrestling with getting you information as up to date as possible for these meetings, but also time to look things over and read them. So I'm going to try to send you more communications more often so you can just see where things are. So just kind of take note whatever I'm telling you is coming in the email, because the links may look similar, but it is all getting updated now that we're using this system with as much real-time information as we can get our hands on.
Pam, I want to say thank you very much for all of the work that you put into this every week and for keeping us up to date. And I want to thank Commissioner Kyler, too, for the amount of time that you spend down in Annapolis, making sure that like Pam, we are seen and heard as much as possible. So thank you both very much for that.
I have one more question.
Sure.
I want to talk about, if you don't mind. It has to do with the hunting bill.
Oh, yes.
And I'm still confused of what you wanted to do last year, and can it still be done? Can you articulate?
What we wanted, sure, I can talk about that a little bit. What we wanted to do last year was very, very simple. We simply wanted to add the name Carroll County to a law that already exists, which allowed for expanded Sunday hunting during deer season. That's all we wanted to do.
And what would it, I mean, 'cause
Yeah.
I don't think it's too late to do that. That's why I'm asking. If you have some of these already existing and you're just adding it to it, they could put it on the agenda for tomorrow. I just don't know exactly which piece you want to add to. Do you
Yeah.
remember?
So,
I can send you the bill from last year.
You don't have to send it to me. If that's
Okay.
if we all agreed on that last year and you have it, just ask them to do it again. Because I think there was confusion of whether Delegate Boucher's bill was going to do that. I don't think
There were some issues last year with how it was written, and I have to look back on my notes because I don't want to misspeak, that caused some opposition to the bill and was why it didn't move. I think there were a couple of approaches that we looked at, and I can get this for you. I just don't want to talk out of turn because it's been a year since I really looked at what we were thinking about. One of the changes was to shift it to a statewide mandate, and that was supposedly an issue that might have worked. But the bill there's a couple of different bills, one of which I haven't seen yet, which is why maybe what Delegate Boyce is putting in, but it hasn't dropped. So
what I'm saying is, if last year's bill, I don't know why it didn't pass, if all it did was add us to something that's already in place, that is like, it just happens.
it did. There was an issue last year with some of the, I think it was the horse, was it the horse?
well, what happened last year was you had a lot of people showing up who were uninformed about what the bill actually stated, because this dealt strictly with people's private land.
Yes.
So there was
That was it.
opposition there from the equestrian community, and then I think maybe some runners clubs who were concerned
Yes.
about, it just, and again, the irony of it all is a private landowner can go on their property on a Sunday and shoot thousands of rounds of ammunition if they'd like to. All we were trying to do was just allow them to vote, to hunt, for an additional number of Sundays. So to Commissioner Krebs' point, if it's really not too late, you can probably find that email from me from maybe like over a year ago, where with the help of the county attorney, we went right into the existing law and just added Carroll County to a list of, I think, 7 or 8 other counties that are doing exactly what we wanted to do. So if it's not too late, that'd be great. I think some of the confusion, and it's justified, is that we really anticipated some of the bills coming before the General Assembly this year to try to do just that.
Yes.
But what's come out of it, and I've tried to read some of it, is clearly written by
different.
somebody who doesn't know anything about hunting and really has no interest in trying to expand those hunting days, which, by the way, at the same time, a lot of people in the General Assembly are complaining about crop damage and, the population's out of control and the number of people that are being injured. insurance rates on vehicles that are getting, hitting deer. They're complaining about those things too. But the way I see it right now, our bill was going to try to address that in Carroll County, but the bills that are there now don't really seem to be.
Was that for what, for game and firearms, or was it bow and arrow, or was it for just expanding Sunday?
It was expanding. Most of the Sundays would have been bow,
Right.
but I think there were one or two that expanded it to rifle, but again, all on private property.
Right. There was something else which I'll look up and send to you also today if we are going to try to do this. There was some proposed way that I think we found to mitigate some of the opposition, I think, if I'm remembering it all correctly. So it's worth looking at that, and I'll let you know either way if you're going to try to introduce something, just so that it has better
Was
idea of
it
getting traction.
opposition locally here, or was it
It-
opposition state?
I think it was both. I think generally, like it was mainly local, but it was dealing, like what you said, the confusion that it was not just private property. Some people were confused about that. And it was also just other sports like equestrian, and there was a couple other people that had raised issues saying that, we want to be able to do what we want to do on Sundays too. And if you can expand hunting, we won't feel comfortable to do that or safe to do that. And then you heard all these stories of
Let me just say, when we
misfortunate
first did
things.
Sunday hunting years ago, we didn't allow it at all. And it was a big deal, and the Sportsman Association did a fantastic job. That's why I asked if they still exist, because the Carroll County Sportsman Association always led the charge on this. They did their homework. All the folks came. We had all the people come, and they were happy. They did all the data on injuries and deaths with firearms and bow and arrow and there was none. So once they understood that the safety issues on the other days of the week were not issues, they wanted to expand it because people work on Saturdays. They
Right.
want an additional day, and for all the reasons that you stated, they just need an additional day to do it. We left there, and everybody was like in kumbaya, and this is when it happened years ago.
And we
For the
did find that
first-
data last year too. We found similar data, which was
What I'm saying is, I don't think it's uncharted territory. They're just not really informed. And if it's simply adding us to this list, it should not be, and reiterating that it's private. In the legislature, it will go through. I mean, I don't see that it would not pass.
okay.
And Boucher's bill had a hearing yesterday at 1.
Yes.
I don't know how it turned
It
out.
was a very confusing bill. I have no idea what it did.
Yeah, it was confusing.
Yeah, his doesn't solve what we
No.
wanted.
No.
And even if Delegate Boyce puts something in and it takes care of the whole state, it might not be what we want, so it's better to have the safety backup and have the one we want and have it take place.
Okay, after this meeting, I will pull last year's bill. I'll pull those notes. I'll make sure you get that first before anything else.
Well, I wouldn't, if there's consensus here, you all agreed to it last year. I mean, I agree with it. I would say you're not going to have time. They got to get they have to get this drawn up. And again, all you're doing is adding Carroll County in, so it should be pretty easy. But they're having a meeting tomorrow, delegation meeting. I would suggest that if we have consensus on it, we could ask them to reintroduce that this year.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner Krebs.
Everybody agrees? Not everybody?
Thank you.
Pam, anything else for us?
That's all I have.
Thank you again very much for everything.
Thank you.
Up next, we have briefing discussion, possible decision for zoning code review and revision, budget transfer, Department of Management and Budget, and Planning and Land Management. Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Commissioners. So we have two agenda items that are back-to-back that are interrelated, but what I'll do is give you a little bit of background for discussion and move from there. So between 2016 and 2022, the county went through a couple of processes to evaluate planning documents. Specifically, the Freedom Area Comprehensive Plan was updated, the county master plan was amended, and then there were changes to both the county code 155, which is development, as well as 158, which is zoning. Now that it's been 3 or 4 years since those codes have been put in place, there's some concerns that perhaps the codes are not consistent with the planning documents that were developed. And that has specifically been addressed recently by the board with a couple of deferrals on specific uses that are the primary concerns. And those are cluster subdivisions, retirement homes and villages, self-service storage facilities, and planned commercial centers. So we put together a request for proposal for consultant support to review the planning documents and our codes to provide an analysis of inconsistencies, make some recommendations as far as how those codes could be adjusted, and then to assist with the process of working with the Planning and Zoning Commission to address those changes if the board so directs. So we put out that RFP for public procurement. We had 3 firms respond, and they respond with a 2-part submittal. There's a qualifications part and there is a cost part. And working with the procurement office, we assembled a selection committee. It was made up of 3 people from the Department of Planning and Land Management and 2 people from the Department of Public Works. We each individually reviewed the proposals, the qualifications part of the proposals, and individually scored them. We provided those scores to the procurement office, and then we integrated in the cost portion. The cost portion affects the overall scoring by 25%. So we're looking for the best solution for the county. The results of that process where we ranked the firms, and we are looking to move forward with the highest ranked firm. As this is not a budgeted project, there are 2 items before you all today. One Ted can speak to, which is transferring funds from the Reserve for Contingencies to the Department of Planning and Land Management to cover the cost, to basically budget for it. And then the second step would be to award the contract to the consultant who was the highest ranked. So happy to answer any questions on the overall background and so on. And then Ted can speak to the budget transfer side of things.
Any comments, questions, thoughts from the board?
I move the Board of County Commissioners approve Resolution O-26.02 to transfer $76,743 from Reserve for Contingency to Planning and Land Management Administration for consulting services.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Ted.
Don't talk so much next time.
So up next, we have the contract award for consulting services for the revision of Carroll County zoning and site development codes. Carrie, good morning.
Good morning. The Office of Procurement, in cooperation with the Department of Planning and Land Management, requests your approval to award a contract for consulting services for the revision of Carroll County zoning and site development codes to Michael T. Baker International Incorporated. The Office of Procurement advertised the solicitation on December 22nd of 2025 on the county's e-procurement platform, Public Purchase. 3 proposals were received in response to this solicitation and are listed below. As Chris stated, there was an evaluation committee that was formed of 5 members. They did review the technical and financial proposals of all 3 proposers that were submitted for the solicitation. After the evaluations were completed and the scoring was submitted to the Office of Procurement and verified, Michael T. Baker International was the highest ranked, and we are requesting the approval in the amount of $76,743, which is in the approved budget.
Any thoughts, questions, comments from the board?
I move the Board of Commissioners award the contract for consulting services for the revision of Carroll County zoning and site development codes to Michael T. Baker International, Inc. in the amount of $76,743.
Second.
We have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Do you know when they're going to start? You know, any idea?
That depends on the establishing the contract with them. Carrie has been working in advance of this to try and get that streamlined as quickly as possible, so.
The contract is, we had that prepared ahead of time and reviewed it, so as soon as I leave here, I'll go over and have
There
it.
was something in the contract about start time. Only reason we lost 6 weeks from the last one, and we've got sort of the time ticking that we promised to accelerate. I just didn't know if there was sooner than later. 'cause
Yeah, I've spoken to them about the contract. We typically ask for 10 days. We asked them for a shorter time frame because of the severity of the project. And they said they'd have it back within 5 days. They just have to review it with their legal counsel. They had some exceptions that we actually worked out with the county attorney prior to this, so we could get it moving.
So
So,
a lot of promises that we're trying to keep to everybody.
Yeah.
Accelerating this.
Understood.
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Up next, we have a briefing and discussion on planned commercial centers. Morning, Daphne. Morning, Claire.
Morning.
How are you both today?
Wow.
Wonderful. Okay, so the last item was a good segue into this one. As you know, the planned commercial centers is the fourth item that is subject to the deferral that we have not yet had a chance to come before you and do a work session on and get your specific direction on. What I'm going to share with you today is a little bit of our understanding of what some of the concerns are. Just a brief overview of kind of where we stand right now in terms of planned commercial centers and specifically how residential uses are treated in our code. And then a staff recommendation for how we could address that for your discussion. So in listening to the conversation around some of the concerns related to planned commercial centers, we understand that the concerns are related to planned commercial centers are primarily focused on the residential component that is possible to build into those planned commercial centers and how that gets manifested when that option is used. In particular, there is concern that there is a lack of sufficient guidance and requirements to consistently produce development that really fully aligns with specifically the 2018 Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan vision and goals and the effort to preserve the character of existing communities. Just a little history on how we got to where we are. Previously, what we now call planned commercial centers were known as planned business centers, and they were regulated in the zoning code. Around 2004, planned business centers were transferred from the zoning code to the subdivision regulations in terms of all of the specifics about how they could be developed. And then in February of 2007, an amendment to that code was made to allow for residential on the second floor of planned business centers. And just to avoid any confusion, I want to note that in 2019, when the business zoning districts became commercial zoning districts, the name planned business center changed to planned commercial center. But it's important to note that the text remained the same as it was in 2007. So at that time, even though the name changed, there were no code provisions that were changed related to what are now known as planned commercial centers. Just a little bit on how we currently treat planned commercial centers. They are defined in both Chapter 155, our development and subdivision of land regulations, as well as 158, our zoning regulations, and the definition is the same. And that definition is 3 or more retail stores, service establishments, medical facilities, or other commercial uses designed as a unit and primarily served by common accessories such as signs, parking lots, and walkways. There's no mention in the definition as to residential uses that are part of that, what's defined as a planned commercial center. In our zoning regulations, then, there are only a few mentions of planned commercial centers, since most of that text was transferred over to our subdivision regs. In particular, Section 158.082, which is our table of uses, lists planned commercial centers as a principal permitted use in all of the commercial zoning districts. The zoning regulations also have reference to dwellings accessory to a planned commercial center under the list of accessory uses. And then planned commercial centers are also referenced in our bulk requirements. The bulk of what how planned commercial centers are addressed in code falls under Chapter 155, which is our subdivision regulations. The first three sections that you see here, A, B, and C, are how planned commercial centers in general are treated. So the first section, A, gives the Planning Commission the authority to approve certain types of planned commercial centers. Section B talks about the development plan that's required for all planned commercial centers, and how the Planning Commission reviews those. So that includes submitting a development plan that describes the entire project site, the location and size of buildings, ingress and egress, that kind of thing. And it gives the authority to the Planning Commission to determine whether the location, size, site characteristics will not cause traffic congestion and will create a harmonious built environment. And then Section C just covers some general regulations related to setbacks and site screening. The big area where I think there's been some concern expressed is in Section D of the subdivision regulations that describe accessory uses for planned commercial centers. And this is where you see the fact that residential uses are allowed as an accessory use to a planned commercial center on the second story of the structure, provided that the structure is no more than 2 stories tall. It also limits the residential unit size to between 600 and 1,000 square feet. And it ensures that those residential units can be subject to concurrency management and development impact fees, like many other residential types of uses. That section also allows for the fact that existing planned commercial centers can be redeveloped to include residential uses if they submit an amended site plan. And then finally, it allows the Planning Commission to require additional parking spaces that accommodate the residential uses over and above what are required for the commercial uses in the planned commercial center. That is really all that is in our code that pertains to residential uses in our planned commercial centers. So I made a note at the bottom of this slide that in this accessory uses section, there's no building or site design requirements that would address the unique needs of what's essentially mixed-use development, other than providing for some additional parking. And I think that's where the bulk of the concerns lie. Really, when you're talking about a place where you want to have people be able to live and live in a nice environment, simply allowing for those to be on top of essentially a strip shopping center doesn't yield good results. So we have a couple of ways that we could move forward with this. This is, of course, subject to the deferral ordinance, and we could certainly have the consultant look at planned commercial centers, and particularly residential and planned commercial centers, and make recommendations for that. I believe if that's the course that we want to go, that we're talking about recommendations that would probably begin to build in a lot of site design requirements, perhaps design guidelines, those kinds of things, and that could be a pretty extensive set of recommendations. However, I want to make a suggestion for your consideration, and that is that to address the concern about preventing any additional planned commercial centers with residential above them to move forward until we can get this right, that we look at removing that language in the subdivision regulations that says this is an allowable accessory use. And of course, we'd make the similar changes in the zoning regulations. And the reason why I make that suggestion is because in the master plan work sessions and community outreach and work groups that we've had, there's been a lot of discussion about housing and about mixed-use development as potentially a way to look at addressing some of the housing concerns. We don't really know where those conversations are going to go at this point. I question whether if we end up at a point where the county says we're interested in some kind of bona fide mixed-use development, I question whether our planned commercial centers are where we ultimately would like to see that happen. And so if we make all kinds of changes to our planned commercial centers to address some of the changes, but then ultimately say, this is not actually where we would like to see this, then we need to go back to square one. So my suggestion for your consideration is that we kind of take a stopgap measure to remove the residential as an accessory use in the planned commercial center, making provisions for, I believe we only have 2 existing planned commercial centers that have residential on the second story. So making provisions for those to be essentially still viewed as legitimate accessory uses because that's how they were approved. But then allow the conversation with the master plan to kind of guide where the desire for mixed-use development and how it looks and how it functions, to allow that master plan discussion to guide our ultimate solutions. So with that, I'll kind of conclude my presentation, and I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on that.
I personally think this is a step backwards. This is affordable housing, walkable. It's what some young people want. I know some starting teachers that they said, this is affordable. I could move out of mom and dad's house because I could find this, and I love it. So if people are moving there and love it, I'm not sure we should keep them from doing that, but that's my personal opinion.
I just want to thank you for acknowledging that the way that mixed use, first of all, is not defined anywhere in our books. And if you read back and read the Freedom Plan, it talks about mixed use. And people talk about having recreational facilities and this and that and the other. It was never about residential. So what was spoken of there and what was in the master plan, if you read it many times, I've met it many, many times, it was nothing envisioned of what this mixed use is. And I'm not saying mixed use other places isn't residential up top. I think some people are trying to get back to what the towns look like. Towns were made with mixed use. They have commercial at the bottom, retail, whatever, and they have living upstairs, and they're nice. All of our towns have that nicely. But when you're building new, it's like, how do you replicate that? When we first started the master plan process many years before it got finished, because it took a long time, we were showed a lot of pictures of mixed use, and they were nice. I've seen lots of mixed use in Leesburg and Virginia and Montgomery County. There's nice products out there that you can get. That was never what we ended up with because we didn't do any design requirements. I mean, we've got balconies out front that have grills on them and people's laundry hanging over. Well, that's not nice for them. It's not nice necessary for us. I don't know what the the costs of these places are, but it can be done better. It's done better at lots of places. So just acknowledging that it's not ever been defined. It was never in planned commercial. It was never, hopefully when the consultant looks at this stuff, when you read a section that tells you what a planned commercial center is, it should tell you what it is. You shouldn't have to read a chart over here that says, oh, you can put residential up top. Again, that wasn't ever part of the discussion. And I really believe that if we have more community input on some of this stuff, we would come up with good ideas on how these things can be accomplished. That wasn't done. It was just sort of thrown in these words, and then somebody proposed the bare minimum. And just because it's the bare minimum doesn't mean it's less expensive, more expensive. It's just not, it's not a benefit to our community. There's not a person that will tell you that the projects that we have, the two, are a benefit to our community. They don't fit in. They're not nice. And that's not anyone's fault, except that we didn't make them have any kind of requirements. Maybe let the balconies face out back instead of facing out. Those are the kind of discussions that need to occur. And I think if you look at the other counties that allow this, they have much more robust language that this is the expectation. And then the expectation, that's what comes out of it. So it's not exactly, I thank you for looking very carefully at what it was, what it says, and what we've got, and there's a disconnect. So I support the fact that we would stop the residential on the top. Again, it's not in there. We don't define mixed use at all. And then go back during the master plan process and say, how do we want this to look and where? And would you suggest that once we do this, we'll have time, then the consultant would come back with recommendations on that as well? Like, these are the choices? Is that what
Yeah, so that is part of the looking, because the planned commercial centers are one of the deferrals that that we're kind of charging the consultant to look at. They could begin to develop some suggestions for it that maybe then can be sort of fleshed out more fully as the master plan discussions go through. And certainly we won't want to just take that off their plate. But in terms of any specific code changes, if we move forward with the staff recommendation, we could probably do that in relatively short order, and then build off of the recommendations that come from the consultant in terms of how that could actually function a little bit better.
So doing that, taking the residential out would take it back to what it was before. They weren't allowed on these business centers before
Right,
that.
prior to 2007.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
So.
And we have only had, I think, the two projects.
Yeah.
And again, both of them are not, almost anyone that knows about them would tell you that they're not an asset to our community. Now, they could be an asset. We could, like I said, turn it into, I think, making it something nicer. But just want to make sure that we don't go through the process again, have people involved in it. One of the things we were lacking a lot is design guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
And developers will do that. They'll, if we say, hey, how about this, they're willing to work with folks, but we have been short of that. So I'm hoping that at least in the Freedom District, and I know the towns do it, they want it, they do it, their own town, local people do it. Hopefully we'll have that conversation locally, what kinds of things would make it amenable, and what kinds of things. It's not that people don't want them, they just want them to be nice. And again, if you read the Freedom Plan, what they define as mixed use, what people's thoughts of it are, have nothing to do with residential on top of commercial. Again, it's not defined anywhere. So I thank you for coming up with this idea.
So this was information. What do we need to do?
Nothing. At this point, it just says for discussion, if I'm not reading this correctly.
Yeah.
Correct. I do have a couple quick thoughts. One, I appreciate staff taking the time to look into all this. And I'm not being disagreeable. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You said that mixed use should not have residential on top of it?
No, I said we don't have it defined anywhere.
Okay,
There's
okay.
no
I want to make sure I heard you correctly.
No, because
Okay.
it does, normally it does, but
Yeah,
we don't
yeah,
define it that way.
okay.
But as I said, in the master plan, when people were discussing it, their vision of when people say, I want mixed use, and you say, what do you mean by that? They mean something, some mean something different. Mixed use generally, I mean, again, you have to define it. Generally, it is a mix that you have some residential at the top, and there's good examples of that. But that was never discussed during the master plan process. that I read or remember and read it in. So I think we just got to come up, this is what we mean by it, and then how do we make it work? It's not that you don't want it, it's just, I mean, there's nice projects, lots of places.
Sure, no, I understand. I just want to make sure I heard you correctly on that. The only thing I will say, and this is not directed to this specifically, but if we've got individuals that have grills on balconies, I think that's a fire code issue that probably someone should consider reporting. I know when I rented 30 years ago, I don't think that was allowable then, so I'm not really certain how they're getting away with that. That's kind of interesting. But no, I do appreciate staff taking the time to look into this, and you know, you look at what's transpired in the last couple years here, right across the street from us with some of the building. It almost would perfectly align with mixed use if we happen to have that nearby. You look at what's going on in the Owings Mills area, they revitalized that whole area with mixed use. I was just down there having dinner recently, and it's a great opportunity, whether it would be, you know, educators, fire, EMS, average citizens, whatever group you want to pick, having that opportunity to live and shop in that same community. So, you know, to Commissioner Krebs' point, it is very similar to what you would see in the old days. The only difference in the old days, you typically lived above your business. If you were the tailor, you lived above it. But now I look forward to hearing some more about this when we get some information back from the party we're bringing in to take a look at it. I thank you for all the work.
So because of the way this was listed on the agenda, we could not vote on this change, because I just, again, it's already been stated by a lot of folks, there's some great examples of mixed use, and that's not what this board is trying to eliminate. And some of the best examples are probably down in McCormick County, and they're fantastic. And are the rents affordable in McCormick County? No, but it's a lot cheaper than having to buy a house or to rent a house. And typically what you see with these mixed use developments in McCormick County is the anchor is a grocery store, and then things that people need. And I've lived in one of those before, and it's fantastic, especially, you know, if there's a coffee shop and there's a bakery and there's something else, and there's usually a cell phone store, there's a Verizon or T-Mobile there, and those are the things that people want to do. We're just removing one aspect of what's going on now that, you know, clearly, you know, maybe wasn't well thought out. No fault of the developers for doing what they've done. And then you've seen how in certain municipalities, you know, I can think of one in particular where they were really bitten by that mixed use term because it wasn't defined. So they said this can be mixed use. The developer, again, no fault of their own, they're just following the rules, went ahead and interpreted them loosely as they can. And then these towns ended up with something that they clearly didn't expect, and it's turned into some legal battles for some of them. So I don't know why we wouldn't, if we can, at some point soon, remove that. It streamlines this whole process of deferrals that we're trying to accomplish, allows the discussions to move forward regarding mixed use, and establish some guidelines there. And again, I think those, if it's done right, they're fantastic. And you would certainly be drawing in a lot of younger people to these areas who are ripe for rent at this point and can't quite buy.
So, yes, you are not constrained by that the staff didn't recommend a motion. You can
And if we
always
did that,
motion.
we'd be clearly be getting into a public hearing at some point.
Right,
and
so
things of that nature.
what the
If we-
next step would be is if the board wanted to have this, would be to go to the planning commission. They would make their recommendation to, just for simplicity's sake, I'll say remove this from, this accessory use from the zoning ordinance and the other related ordinances, and then it would come back to you with that recommendation. Then you'd send it to public hearing, and then you'd vote. So
Should we
if
add to this, I mean,
you're interested, you could start with that.
when I see your staff recommendation, and the first one, and then it talks about the second paragraph about being a topic of discussion. But should we give any more direction that we want the consultant to make recommendations about what other things we could be, to give you, it sounds like you want to handle it during the next master plan process or whatever, of having discussions about how we would do this and define it. I even look at the unit size. I'm not sure where we came up with 600 to 1,000 square feet. That, I know there's some mixed use that down in Leesburg that are absolutely gorgeous, that are big, nice, like, nice condo things upstairs. So, I mean, I don't want to really limit us. The 600 to 1,000 might be appropriate on one, but leave it wide open to whatever is offered. So don't, I mean, on one hand, we're limiting that, which I'm not sure why. The parking is another thing. One thing that I hope the consultant looks at is there's too many mays, way too many mays in the code. And one of the issues I see with the current ones we have is parking. Their parking is out front with the retail. So what happens is they park in the back next to the fire hydrant, which is illegal, but nobody's calling them. And because it's closer for them to bring their stuff upstairs, their groceries, I understand why. But if you laid it out better, you would be able to have your parking in a separate area, in the back where residential is, instead of parking with the retail. There's a lot of things that need to be done to do it right, and we have not done it right. We just allow it on the top, and it hasn't been a good product. So should we, when we give direction, do you want more of that in there? That we clearly want it to be looked at. We're not just taking it out to take it out. We're taking it out to stop what we have and give us time to reevaluate what define mixed use, what do we want the definitions to be, and go back through it.
I think at this point, if I may, this would be just, it's sort of a two-stage thing. Take it out, and then that stops it from going forward, and you don't have to worry about this until you've had a chance to have all those discussions and determine, what is the right parking, what is the right look, what are the design guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the way I think it's being recommended at this point, is that the motion would be to the Planning Commission to consider and come back with a recommendation to remove as an accessory use in the planned commercial centers, and then that action, when it's completed through the whole process, would then give the board, the Planning Commission, and staff the time to do the study that you're looking for, Commissioner.
So
with the consultant.
Is that logic because it doesn't seem like anybody objects to residential being there. They object to defining it better. So are you saying that would take too long, so we need to take it out while we're doing that?
Basically, yes.
Okay.
Otherwise, you have to extend the deferral until all that happens, which you really don't want to do. And we don't have anything in the pipeline, so it's better to...
Because we don't know where the master plan's going to kind of guide things, the timing might not line up. So this gives us an opportunity to address the immediate concerns. This conversation here has been very helpful to help us then work with the consultant on the kinds of things that maybe we might ask them to look at. So how would you define mixed use? What are some hallmarks of good, successful mixed use? What are some things that we might want to look at in terms of tools to achieve that? If that's the direction that the master plan goes, those kinds of things, we could ask them to give us kind of some starter ideas that then get fleshed out in alignment with the direction.
Right, and there's
of the
nothing in the
master plan.
pipeline. There were zero, in the pipeline.
Right.
The one thing I would like to ask about, on the planned commercial centers, and you mentioned this on page 3 of slide 6, that I'm concerned about, and this had, the one in particular that we have, it talks about road ingress and patterns and will not cause traffic congestion. I'm not sure how we give all these small properties, and they put these little strip shopping centers, they all have ingresses and egresses. We have problems on the current Route 26 corridor with so many ingresses and egresses. I'm seeing that same thing happening up the road now. Because the planned commercial center that's there now, it's a huge problem at Clees Mill Road. I mean, Clees Mill Road in the morning is a mess because you have 2 new big projects. And they don't consolidate the access points. So somehow when we're doing all these decisions, we've got to figure out, we don't want to make another Route 26 corridor problem in another area. And having all these ingresses and egresses is starting to cause that already. And again, we don't make them fix anything. We don't make them do road improvements. But we need to plan for that. And whether it's combined ingresses and egresses, or they have to come out at a light or something. But I see the writing on the road that we're going to have writing on that doesn't make sense. Writing on the wall that that section about these planned commercial centers, we've got to somehow consolidate accesses, or because we've got them all boom, 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 and we're doing the same thing over again. So that needs to be more thoroughly vetted. I know they come in with a plan, the planning commission says these are the rules, so I don't know if we have to make the rules to force that to occur or what, but it needs to change.
Okay, noted, thank you.
So does someone want to make a motion to send this to the planning commission for the potential removal of residential as an accessory use in a planned commercial center?
I can make that motion, but nothing else, you're going to give them the direction that this conversation of what we're trying to, okay. So we just need the simple motion?
Yeah, it would be similar to some of the other work sessions that we've had where you've expressed your concerns. It's helped us understand what those concerns are, and then that translates into what we're looking at with the consultant without you having to make motions on all of this.
And I would also ask, as we do this, as we move forward, and I don't know how it's going to happen, but the community's got to be involved in these things, the community that's impacted. And right now, there's no one in the community impacted, it's one person that's involved in any of these discussions, and that's not the way plans are developed. And I know Westminster does a great job of including folks. We've got to find a way, not just to show up at a meeting and hear about it, but to have them put their brains together and be involved in some of these things. That's why we wouldn't be derailed now if we had that to begin with. And it's causes problem on the backside. So I'll make a motion that we follow the staff recommendation, remove residential as an accessory use in planned commercial centers, and send it back to the planning commission.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you both very much. Thank you, everybody. Up next, proposed text amendment to section 158.115, use off the premises signs.
That's us again.
This whole graphic.
All right.
Your homework folder
is
Switch
cool.
I
my-
like that graphic.
Okay, so we are here before you as a follow-up to discussion that you directed the Planning Commission to have regarding use off the premises signs, specifically a proposal to allow for consolidation and relocation of those. So this presentation could potentially get kind of confusing. So we're going to try to make it as clear as possible, only confusing because there are a lot of very detailed pieces to this. So please stop me if you need clarification on anything. So I'm going to go through the proposal itself and some of the background on and context for the proposal. Claire will discuss the proposed text amendment that the Planning Commission is forwarding to you, and then a couple of different ways that you could choose to respond to this. So just as a refresher, in August of last year, there was a request brought before you to explore the possibility for billboard consolidation that would amount to no net increase in sign area. And you agreed to send that proposal to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their review. They discussed it at several meetings, once in October, once in December, and once in January of this year. Just to note, we have received 3 letters of opposition to the proposal so far, and those are primarily oriented to a concern about increasing the size of the billboards that are out there. So the intent of this proposal is to reduce the number of billboards while allowing billboard owners to modernize signage to align with industry standards. And the proposed way of doing this is to allow for consolidation of existing billboards and removal of signs that are being consolidated in order to allow for the installation of a larger, possibly digital sign at the same location.
All right, just So I'm with you so far. You've got two separate signs. They are a certain size. The idea is to combine the size of the signs and potentially remove the sign and put in a new sign that's the same size as the two signs that were removed,
Put together.
put together.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're with me so far. Okay, so now I want to just give you a sense of what our current regulations allow. So in 2003, the county took some significant steps to limit the size of use off the premise signs, also known as billboards. And that limited them to 10 feet high, and that's 10 feet from the roadway to the top of the sign. 10 feet high and 32 square feet in area. But we have a lot of billboards in the county that pre-existed 2003 and exceed these limits, and that makes them non-conforming signs currently. We have a registry that we maintain of all of these billboards, and currently we have 121 registered non-conforming use off the premise signs. They average about 28.5 feet in height, again, from the grade of the roadway, and 308 square feet in size. The photo that you see on this slide on the right-hand side is a sign that's located on Maryland 140, just west of Green Mill Road. And that sign is approximately the same size as the average numbers that I gave you there, just so you get a visual of what that could look like. This one happens to be a digitized sign. The map on the left here shows not all of the locations of billboards, but rather the properties that potentially could take advantage of this text amendment if it moves forward and be able to consolidate signs. So these are all eligible properties with 2 or more use off the premises signs that potentially could be consolidated.
Existing signs. They could-
Yes, thank you.
No, just.
And how many of those signs exist?
There are 121.
Oh, I'm sorry, but you said, but the eligible properties have.
Yeah,
that-
so you might have, so each star represents a property that has more than one sign on it. So you might have an image of a billboard somewhere that you don't see with a star in that area of the county. That's probably because it's a single billboard on a single property and wouldn't be affected by this option to consolidate.
And then, so to that point, all those stars combined add up to 121 billboards that would fall under the potential amendment here.
Not quite. I don't know the answer to that question, but
Okay,
all of
all right.
these stars are, it's really just meant to give you a sense of where consolidation could happen in the county. And so you see it's primarily along the 140 corridor and a few other state roads in other parts of the county.
So we're going from 10 feet, or new, if it was new, it'd be 10 feet off the road, and this is
There can't be any new billboards.
right now.
Right.
But this would allow, I mean, we're going from, there can't be any new ones more than 10 feet off the road, which is not that high, to consolidating what we have, but they could be 50-foot high. Is that right? Am I getting that right?
That is the current proposal, and we'll get into those.
First of all, I want to thank you. This is a
specifics
great proposal, I mean, a great presentation, informative, and so was the last one. So thank you for the time taken to give us the background.
Absolutely, and I'll just take the opportunity to acknowledge Tiffany Fawcett, who did a lot of this work, and Claire, of course, who you'll hear from as well. I'm just stepping in.
Thank them. Thank you.
Because Tiffany's been out of the office, not feeling well, so. Okay, so map shows general location of properties where you have signs that could be consolidated. I don't know how many that actually amounts to. High level of the summary that the Planning Commission is recommending for your consideration is that multiple existing non-conforming billboards on the same or adjacent parcels could be consolidated into one new sign. The maximum square footage would, first and foremost, not be any more than the total square footage of all of the signs being consolidated. But even if that square footage exceeded 672 square feet per side, they would be limited to no more than 672 square feet per side, or I think that's 1,344 square feet total if you have like a double-sided sign. That's essentially a 14-foot by 48-foot billboard. The proposal is also that the maximum height of these consolidated signs would be 50 feet from the grade of the roadway. And then
To the
there's.
top of the sign?
Yes, to the top of the sign.
Just making sure I understand.
Yes. And then the final provision is that when these signs were consolidated, the new sign would have to be located within 25 feet of one of those existing signs that's subject to the consolidation.
So just to mention this, and I know you've gone through all this already, but just for anybody that's watching, because I know this is a lot of information and I appreciate it. We're not looking, I know some people had expressed concerns that there was going to be this massive increase of signage. We're not having that. What we're having is a situation where we'll take two signs and consolidate them to the one. So for those individuals watching or anyone that's concerned, it's not a case of us adding more. It's actually decreasing. It's just one singular sign to replace the two.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And also, I'll just highlight, because I don't think we have it in the presentation later on. This was a conversation that we had with the Planning Commission, and the question was posed to them. What is the value? Is there greater value to having fewer signs, but potentially larger signs, or keeping the signs small, but having these, the number not decrease? So there is there are trade-offs there.
And the 10-foot on the current signs, is that to the top of the sign as well?
Yes.
So the square footage of the signs consolidated would be the same, but the height would be five times higher.
That's right. So, so the next set of slides that I'm going to walk you through are meant to give you maybe a visual of what the effect of the consolidation could be. So I'm going to show you this one, which is kind of an illustrated version of that. Then I'm going to show you a bit of a sort of a photoshopped version of what a consolidation could look like. And then I'm going to show you some actual on-the-ground signs that are the same dimensions of what we're talking about here. So in this slide, you'll see on the far right side, that 32 square foot green sign that's at 10 feet high at the top. That's just a reference point for you. This is if somebody were to build a new sign, and they are allowed to build new billboards within these regulations, but I don't think anybody's really doing that because it's very small. But they are allowed to do that. So that's just a point of reference. The other signs that you see here, the 123 square feet, the 112 square feet, and the 312 square feet. And you can see on the left-hand side what generally those heights would be. If you were to take all three of those and combine them together, you would get a total square footage that could be consolidated of 547 square feet on a single panel. So that's what you see on the far right-hand side, and we've put that up at the 50-foot level that's being proposed. So this gives you kind of an illustrated sense of some of the differences in scale and height. And now I'm going to walk you through our attempt to kind of say what this could look like on the ground. So this is a particular area along 140 where you have multiple billboards that are on the same property. Some of them are owned by the same company, others are owned by different companies. So that's an important distinction to make here. So in this example, you have a property that has multiple nonconforming signs. You have several separate signs on both sides of the road. So that does qualify as adjacent areas. And under this proposal, signs that are owned by the same sign owner could be converted or could be consolidated with the same, to a new sign with the same area and located on generally one of the locations of those signs. And because this is in a, at least on the left-hand side, is in a business zoning district, it could be converted to a digital sign. So those are the kind of the parameters on this property. If we were to take, and you'll see on this, the blue arrows, sorry, the blue arrows indicate where billboards in this picture currently exist. So there are
7.
There are 7 arrows, but just call your attention to that foremost one is actually 2 separate signs. So if you were to take all of the signs that were owned by the same sign owner, consolidate them together, and create one new sign within the parameters of this proposal, this would potentially be the effect. So what you're seeing here is that multiple signs have been combined into a single new sign, and I think we calculated out maybe 5 of those signs, 5 or 6 of those signs were consolidated. The maximum area of the new sign is 672 square feet per panel, and that's what's shown here. It's also shown at the maximum height of 50 feet. And because it's in the business zoning district, it could be converted to a digital sign. When we removed all those 5 signs, they could potentially do a double-sided sign with that square footage there.
So Daphne, may I ask, and if you don't know the answer to the first question, that's okay. So for the non-conforming signs that we currently have, what is the greatest maximum height of any of those that currently exist?
I think it's 48 feet.
Yep.
48 feet? Okay. And then, so I understand that this is a Photoshop, Photoshopped image and everything, right?
Yeah.
But I'm looking at the sign here, and that would be this would be the maximum possible height that a sign could be.
Yes.
I would imagine, though, beyond the fact that this is just an illustration, that if somebody decided to do that sign at that location, it wouldn't work because of the power lines, right?
That's possible. I don't know the specifics of how, what the distance requirements are. Of course, there is that 25-foot wiggle room, so they could potentially shift it within that 25 feet.
Okay.
If the power lines were an issue.
Yeah, all right. Thank you very much.
So also in this slide, you'll see the signs that have been consolidated have been removed, and that would be a requirement of the amendment, that any consolidated signs are permanently removed. However, as you notice, there are a couple of arrows still on the slide, and that is because those signs are owned by a separate sign owner. And so we can't really require consolidation of property that's owned by multiple different sign companies.
And
Okay.
actually, I'm sorry, just thought of something else. I apologize. And again, if you don't know the answer right now, that's okay. How many of the non-conforming signs exceed 40 feet in height?
I don't know that offhand, but we can certainly get you that information because that is part of the data that we have associated with the inventory.
Okay, thank you. And
40
part
feet,
of the,
is it 40 feet or 45? What you go
well,
ahead.
the highest maximum right now, the greatest height right now is a 48-foot sign that's non-conforming. I'm curious
Is that
about
right,
the-
48, I
Right.
wrote the wrong thing.
And so I'm wondering
You're
how many of
wondering how
them.
many of them there are. Yeah.
Right.
There are 38 signs on our registry that are between 40 and 48 feet.
And the reason why I'm asking is I'm trying to get a sense of the change that would occur if this went through. I'm trying to get a sense of what change would occur, not necessarily from the reduction in the number of signs, but the appearance of signs that would be larger, greater height, greater extent, and what that might end up looking like as well. So for example, like a 48 to a 50-foot height difference is not that big of a difference. But if, for example, the majority of these signs were, say, 10 feet or 20 feet, then going from that to 50 feet would certainly be a significant difference between what exists and what could exist.
Right. Yeah, so the average was 28.5.
Average is
and-
28.5.
Yeah. But I don't know how many are in each of those, like, 10-foot increments. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Okay. Now I'm going to give you a couple of visuals for signs that are already in the ground that are roughly the size of what's being proposed here. So we're down in the Finksburg area. The two signs that I'm going to show you are right in the vicinity of Deedy Road, between the reservoir and Deedy Road there, where there's a pretty heavy commercial presence. So the sign in the top slide, we're looking at the one on the right-hand side, not the Jiffy Mart sign, but this is just behind the Jiffy Mart on the way to the reservoir, so heading east. That sign is currently sitting at about 45 feet. I think that's right. Yeah, 45 feet, and the total square footage is 672, which is what we're talking about with this proposal.
So while you're on that slide, so the sign to the left relates to the property, so it's not an off-premises sign.
That's right.
It has nothing to do with this.
That's right. Yep. And this one is digitized. There is there are panels on both sides of the road. And then the slide on the bottom is a non-digitized print sign. That is, if you were headed east on 140 from the Jiffy Mart there, it's the last billboard before you start heading down the hill towards the reservoir. This one as well is at that 45 feet and 672 square feet in area per panel. And this one is also a double-sided panel.
And you mentioned digitized. I see on number 2, it looks lit. Are the big ones now all lit? They have lighting on them?
I don't know if they all are, but that is an option.
I'm just trying to, from a night view kind of thing, what are the advantages? Do they want to do the digitized because they can be changed? What is the purpose of wanting to go to the digitized lit larger?
So I can, once we're finished with our presentation, we have some comment period. We do have folks here who can speak to that from the industry, but I believe one of the things is that you have the changeable messages. So I would imagine that your advertising revenues would probably increase because of that changeover. Okay, I think the last slide for me is simply describing some of what the state highway has in terms of use off the premises signs, because if you recall from that map, most of the properties that would be eligible for this consolidation lie along a state highway. So obviously, there are some things that apply from the state highway side of things that would affect what anybody could do in this consolidation process. So the first thing is that the state does address nonconforming signs. They can remain, but they can't be relocated, rebuilt, or enhanced.
So a non-conforming paper, or whatever you want to call it, sign can't be changed to digital, or can it be? It can be changed.
It can be, yeah.
But otherwise, they can't do any rebuilds or enhancements.
Right.
Can't
They
make it
can't make it
bigger.
bigger, they can't,
Right.
but they can change from paper to digital.
In certain zoning districts.
Yeah,
So in
uh,
our code,
yeah,
it's only in the
gotcha.
commercial and industrial zoning districts. Same thing with the state in terms of where they would allow for billboards. Their height is a maximum of 25 feet, but their area maxes are a little bit larger than what's proposed with this proposal. So 800 square feet per panel or 1,600 square feet total. And then in terms of setbacks, they do not allow billboards within or over the state right-of-way for the state highway.
So if there's a 25-foot max, how does that be 50? Does it have to be further away? If this is state code for state highways, and these are all along state highway, how does that work?
That's a question. That's a question, yeah.
So we'd have to find out from them whether the 25 feet height
Right,
is still, okay.
right.
Now, that's a big question.
Okay, so that is it for the proposal and background. We have we can walk you through the detailed parts of the proposed text amendment, but before we do that, I just wanted to pause and see if anybody had any questions or thoughts you wanted to share before we launch into the actual text amendment itself.
Well, sounds like we have some choices to make, and we've got some that presented to us. Do we want to take this opportunity to listen to public comment and anybody who might be on the phone to further clarify some of these questions we've had? Do we want to do that now, or do we want to wait?
Sure, why not?
I have no public comment card, so.
No? Okay. Nobody on the phone?
I don't know.
Okay.
I guess they're just here to answer questions.
Okay,
so-
sure.
You're getting one.
So there's okay, so we do have a public comment card, so,
Mine, just it's
No,
easier.
go ahead.
for me to stick this up here. Good morning, Kelly Schaefer Miller, 73 East Main Street, Westminster, Maryland, 21157. I'm here this morning on behalf of Clear Channel Outdoor, who is the entity who made this initial request. As you recall, we were here before in front of you for the introduction of this amendment. We are happy to answer any questions if there are any about the industry and some of the specifics of the request being made. And so if you just want us to jump in, we can speak to some of the things that have come up so far. Excuse me, and I do have Steve Brevinick with me as well. He's a representative of Clear Channel Outdoor, so if there's anything that he needs to correct me on, he can kind of, you can hand your comment card to Roberta and jump in here. So as you're probably aware, Clear Channel Outdoor is the owner of several boards in Carroll County. And just for your understanding, I think it's helpful to know that most often the structure of these is that the owner of the billboard is leasing property from an owner. So almost entirely, they do not own the property that is the subject of these applications. The property owner would also have to sign off on any application that's made to the zoning administrator, but usually the owner of the sign is just leasing that property, and usually that's a lease that's recorded in land records as well. I think that's just helpful background to understand. As staff has said, there's nothing about this proposal that would allow for any additional signs to be constructed. In fact, and I'm sure Claire will get into this in her presentation of the text itself, but the proposal actually further restrains construction of signs because it requires property owners to sign off on an application, also consenting to not construct any new signs, which again are already very limited, but are an allowable thing that they could otherwise ask for. So it does further restrict that. The uses that are allowed today, all of these non-conforming signs and the examples that you've seen across the county are allowed to be maintained, replaced, and rebuilt today in their current standards. So their current area, their current height, all what you see today is allowed to be maintained and replaced. Occasionally you'll see a weather event, maybe take a sign down, and then you'll see it be rebuilt. It's allowed to be rebuilt to the specifications that it collapsed in, basically. The digital conversion is allowed in the code today as well. That's only allowed in the commercial and industrial zone. So that's why you've seen some of those signs convert to digital. That is an allowed process. So we're not creating that allowance by virtue of this amendment, it would just allow for the new consolidated sign to go through and request a digital process if eligible otherwise. The height that is being requested is really important from a visibility perspective, but also from a vandalism perspective. I think I'm not the only one who sees some of these signs being vandalized around our county and everywhere. It's not specific to Carroll. And so increasing the height really prevents a lot of that. And that's one of the main goals of Clear Channel, is to just the modernization of these structures will create a more visually appealing sign because they will be brought up to different standards. And so that's the main goal there. When digital is allowed to happen and when a digital conversion takes place, it does help in the maintenance as well, because it doesn't require a person to climb up and change the panels and such, so that it creates a bit of a safer environment for the employees and those sorts of things. But these are not always going to be eligible or be able to be converted to digital, so I don't want you to think that that would always happen with a consolidation. But certainly we're seeing a movement over the past several years for sign owners to want to explore the digital conversion, and those are subject to very strict lighting requirements for billboards that are not applicable to your use on the premise sign. So some of your individual business owner signs are not subject to the same strict lighting requirements that the billboards are subject to. And I think I hit some of the questions that came up, but if there were any that I missed, please point them out.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
And I want to make sure we're following public comment protocol as well with our time limit. And I don't know if we have any further public comments at this point now as well.
I was just given a card
Okay,
if the board
so,
wants to.
yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
I have a question. I know we're not supposed to ask
No, go-
questions, but
No, go ahead.
can you go back and address the state code policy about the 25 feet max and what that would mean?
Yes, so our experience in dealing with the state code is that that's a standard that's applicable to new structures, new signage requests, not conversion or rebuilds of non-conforming signs. So, but we understand that staff has some different readings, I think, of the state code. So what you'll hear Claire explain in the presentation of the text amendment is that we've put in a provision into the text amendment that says any sign going through this process would need to obtain all necessary permits through SHA. That is already a requirement. SHA is a signatory on permits for any of these digital conversions or rebuilds as it is, but we just clarified that in the text. There's no intent to work around state requirements otherwise. I think it's just a difference of what's in the state code and how it's actually applied in real life today. And so we just built that safeguard from the county's perspective into the text amendment itself, where it ensures that any necessary state permit would have to be signed off and received before this could happen at all.
And so currently, big billboards might have lights on them, but the smaller ones generally do not. Or they're less, I mean, I think the
Kind of
biggest
hit or
concern
miss,
that
yeah.
I have is about just the visibility at night for all along. And Daphne, I'm going to ask you this question. And I had this concern about public comment. You said you got 3 public comments. I know we've gotten a bunch. How do we make sure that, I mean, people don't know who to send stuff to. Do they send it to the commissioners? Do they send it to the planning commission? Do they send it to you? How do we make sure that we get you, because I know I've had more than 3. How do we make sure we get it to the right people? And how many people have commented? Like,
So if people would use the commissioner's email address, if they want to email the commissioners, then we, staff, monitor that and send it to
okay,
the
so you
planning
do that?
commission.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, because I wasn't sure of that. Because a couple of them I said send it to the
But
planning.
they sometimes do, I don't mean to interrupt, but they sometimes do send it to individually, and then we don't know. So that's why we always encourage people to use the general commissioner's email address.
Okay, you're monitoring that, that's fine. Good, I'm glad, I should have asked that a long time ago. Only reason I'm asking, this is, obviously, the billboards have been a big issue for many years of the Finksburg community, the Think Pack and whatever. And it's really their community, and be nice to hear what they think about. I know we have 2 recommendations down here. One is to send it to a work group, which means we sit and talk about it again, or to send it out and see what the people think and what the advantages and disadvantages are. And you talked about the height of the 50 feet. Is that a given? Could it be 25 or 30? I mean, it might be
Is that
more
a deal
amenable.
breaker?
Is it a deal breaker? Is that something to be amenable, the height?
I think, I don't want to speak for Steve. I think it's somewhat flexible. The 50 feet is based on predominantly on that DD road billboard that was an example. That's very close to 50 feet. And so several of the existing non-conforming boards are much higher than the 10 foot, which would be for a new construction today. So we certainly wouldn't want to lose height from what we're allowed to have today.
But you might maintain it for the one that's there, but on a new one, adding any new height, I guess is what I'm talking about. I'm trying to figure out what would be a compromise. I just know that community for years, their billboards have been a big, big issue.
Yes.
They don't think it's a benefit to the community, and it was one of their top priorities years ago. It took years to get the whatever you want to call it, on the billboards and get the agreement that came up today. I just remember reading about it in the paper. So I just would like to know what they have to hear, because it is
Yes. And to
balance.
that point, we would also welcome seeing any of those public comments that haven't gone through that main chain, because we don't have access to those either. And we certainly would like to have that dialogue and that opportunity to review those concerns as well. So
And that's that's always a good idea to put them in touch, I think, to the people that
Yes.
could understand what their issues are. But if we're okay with that.
And once they email us a public comment, it's public information, so.
So you can either ask for it, or we can say, we'll give them to you. No, but sometimes reach out and say, what is your issue? Do you not want it lit up? Do you not want, they're going to have a certain amount of billboards based on the non-conforming, but, I understand their issue. What they've been trying to accomplish, they'd like to not have any of them. But it was an agreement.
So I have one last question. If this is covered when I stepped out, I do apologize. Sound. Is sound covered? And because I've seen plenty of electronic billboards that also employ sound. And so I'm curious as to whether or not we have any restrictions, or would have any restrictions, on whether or not these electronic billboards could employ sound, music, that kind of thing.
I don't believe we have anything specified in the.
I think perhaps I did cover that when you were out, which
You-
is
okay.
that maybe what you're thinking of are some of the business signages that are digitized that are utilizing sound. I could be mistaken. I know it's certainly not any of Clear Channel's, but I don't think any of the digital converted billboards employ sound. You might be seeing it on some of the business signage that has digital that is subject to different requirements than the billboards.
Well, but that's exactly why I'm asking, though, is whether or not the billboards, if they are potentially changed to the way that's being considered, would that, do we need to enforce some kind of sound regulation with that? Because, I may love rock music, but in the middle of the country, next to some, poor farmer's, bedroom window or something, may not be the best thing at, 3 in the morning.
Yes, and just to clarify, we have no intent of adding sound, so if that's a restriction that we'd like to add in, we would have no objection
No, it's a good idea.
to that.
Why not put it in? You never know.
I'd never even thought of that.
I mean, either. See,
I've never heard
bring a youth guy here that likes music.
So, Roberta, I believe we have some public comment.
It's just Ms. Bergman, if you want to.
I have no one on the line.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Diana Bergman. I had a question. What's the turnaround time regarding having one of the existing signs go down and one of the new ones going up? And it just came to mind because it is an election year, and some candidates will probably be investing in utilizing some of the signs that are available. So I was just kind of curious, if this goes in place, what's that turnaround time?
So we'll address that when we get to the specifics of the proposal, but there is language at the end of the proposed new section that talks about once a use and occupancy permit is issued for the new sign, within 30 days, the previously existing signs that are subject to the consolidation need to be removed, and the applicant has to provide an affidavit to the zoning administrator that confirms that the removal is complete.
And that would be for a sign particularly, but not for the overall process, correct? That
Right.
including everything that we're going through now.
To get to that UNO, you have to go through the whole process of applying for your permits and all that sort of stuff. So But once that sign is in the ground and functional, they have 30 days to remove all of the other signs that are part of that consolidation.
Thank you very much.
I see that you have a lot of text here, and I read it the other night, but it's very nuanced. But at the end, we have the possible actions of the work session versus the public hearing. Do we need to go through all of this, or would this just, are you recommending that we would take this, if we did the public hearing way, take this and put this out there and say, this is what's proposed? Or are you looking for us to make changes to this to take it to the public hearing? What's your intent of this part?
That sort of depends on your discussion. So obviously, we'd want to make sure that you've thoroughly looked at what's being proposed before you send it to public hearing. Make sure that you're comfortable with that. But if you all have read it, digested it, and are comfortable with it, we can go ahead and go to public hearing and start getting feedback.
I was kind of thinking the same way you were thinking. I don't think we need a work session, but if we put it to a public hearing, after that, we can change any of this we want.
Absolutely.
So if we agree with the concept, maybe it's not worth going through all the wording today. We just want to make a motion to send it to public hearing.
And the only thing I ask in this, everything has been great, but I do notice that there's nuances in whether it's in the C1, 2, 3, or I1, or whatever it is up those corridors. It might be good somehow to identify on the billboards what zoning they are, so they would know which of these things would apply to them, because it's different, whether it's C1, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because they might think they're reading one thing and say, oh, I didn't know that was in C2, or I didn't know it was in I1.
Yeah.
And then you know, with this particular sign, could happen there.
Right, so if somebody wants to make a comment thinking, not knowing the underlying zoning, there may be more restrictions that wouldn't apply to the one billboard that they're really worried about, let's say. And so, yeah, we can try
Or
to
even that whole
figure out a
corridor, I
way
mean,
to make
the corridor that we're talking about, mostly, I mean, most of them are going up 140. Are they all the same zone property, or is that all different going up there?
It's a little different, and mostly that distinction between commercial and industrial and other zoning districts relates to which signs can be converted to digital.
No,
You
but
can
it would,
only
I'd sound, reading some of this, it looks like it could be, make it different.
Yeah.
And nice to be clear,
Yeah.
what are we talking about here?
And I want to just clarify, if we're not going to go through the language, which is fine, I don't think we need to. I just want to confirm that nothing that is currently being proposed requires a landowner or sign owner to do anything. And I want to make sure that's okay. I want to make sure people who are listening understand that, who may not be, paying attention to this particular issue and are one of those two parties. You don't have to do anything. This is choice.
That's correct.
Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Yeah, and that, again, also depends on it doesn't require the sign owner to consolidate. Those would be private negotiations between the sign owner and the property owner to determine if that's even something that they want to do.
For clarification, I'm probably violating all our public comment rules. Primarily, one company is pushing for this, and I think that company has the majority of signs in Carroll County, but not 100%. The half, 3/4, you taking it all over?
Probably more like half, 3/4, I would say, at Clear Channel. There are several other sign owners, some bigger than others.
Yeah, and they could well benefit from this,
Yes.
but so far they haven't pushed for it.
And I would suggest, I think we're going in the direction of a public hearing. I always think information ahead of time is better, so people come informed, and they've already, looked at this stuff versus bashing you with questions. This proposal, or this information is very good, and you might even put a link to our discussion. And then people, hopefully, that are really interested could watch it and listen to always been said, and come to the meeting with well-thought-out positions on what they're trying to do, or compromises or whatever. You know what I'm saying? They're more educated going into it versus coming in and having to go through all this and then think about it. It just lets them realize what the options are, because
Good idea.
it's all here.
So if we do proceed to a public hearing, we could schedule that in a way that allows enough time for, say, some kind of presentation to the Finksburg Planning and Citizens Council, I think that's the full name, or some other kind of informational.
Well, I think that you
yeah.
should do that too, but sometimes if people read stuff ahead of time, their preconceived notions before coming in, they have time to talk and think about it.
Yeah.
Just
And at a minimum, I mean, I think that's a very good idea, especially Finksburg one, because they have the majority of them, it looks like. But in the press releases that we'll send out associated with the public hearing whenever it's scheduled, we'll do our very best to not only link things, but also to lay out some of the top issues that seem to be, addressed. Consolidation, that it's voluntary, that, what some of those things mean, the different zoning categories. So it might be a little heavy in terms of information, but trying to get the
Well,
information
if
out
you
to
put it as a
people.
link, they don't have to click on it. But my point is, it's there for, I mean, there might be a handful of people that want to really educate themselves. But it is one of those balancing acts, and it's the community that's impacted that has been very involved in trying to eliminate this for a long time. It's sort of, what do they think about it?
Yeah.
Does our notice of a public hearing always, or can it include a link to all the information that's on our website?
The notice that's published in the newspaper, it has highly constrained. But what we put out.
What we send out.
Yeah, so not the official notice, that's highly
Yep.
constrained by the law. But what we put out, yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
And, I would suggest, I know we got the Carroll Connect now, we're trying to really use that as our true communication tool, which allows you to do the links and everything. But I know we put it out as a press release, but we also might want to just put it out through our own.
Well, the press releases all go out through all sorts of our social media, so you can share them, you can all share.
I'm just saying, but we could just send out through who is in our database too, to make sure as many people get it as possible.
Yep, you're welcome to do that, yeah, for sure.
It affects mostly 2 areas, but.
If I could just quickly go back to the presentation, because I want to call your attention to something that we haven't talked about yet. So I just want to cover this before you make a motion to send anything to public hearing. So we have the proposals for use off the premises signs, this idea of consolidation. In the course of looking at this proposal, the Planning Commission also identified an additional concern related to billboards that they wanted to try to address, as well as our zoning administrator identified a couple of cleanups to the current language that she wanted to propose. If we're opening up this section of our code, it's probably a good idea to be able to make these cleanup adjustments. So if you'll bear with me for just a minute, they're fairly short, and I can touch on those just so that the discussion is had. So the first one is related to section 158.113 of our zoning code, which relates to the general regulations for signs. The concern from the Planning Commission was to address requirements to remove, relocate, or modify signs when they obstruct traffic visibility. So they were concerned about areas where there might be signs that are blocking a driver's vision. And the proposed text is to insert a new section into this part of the code that requires the zoning administrator to require a sign to be relocated, removed, or modified if it obstructs traffic visibility. And this would require the sign owner to comply with the order within 30 days of receipt of that order, and that if they need to apply for a new permit, they can submit that within 90 days of receipt of that order. So this was a suggestion that would address some safety concerns. And then just a few administrative adjustments, mostly to align the current language with how things are with practice, basically. So, again, replacing business references to business districts to referencing commercial districts, which is just how they're known now. And then a couple of sections where we talk about how the zoning administrator reviews and issues zoning certificates for outdoor advertising signs. So just changing that to reference the fact that it's not a conference, but an administrative hearing, and that within 15 days of that hearing, the zoning administrator needs to issue either a written approval or denial, and then, of course, the language that's here specifically says the zoning administrator shall decide whether to issue the zoning certificate or issue a written denial. That is what is in our text right now. There's actually an extra step in terms of issuing the zoning certificate. She has to first issue the approval of the application before that zoning certificate can be made. But this is the language that we have in our existing tests. So there's just a couple of places then where that language would be aligned.
Yeah, the proposed text administrative adjustments, they make sense, but one concern about this proposed text for obstruction to traffic visibility is who determines who actually determines if traffic visibility is being obstructed. I mean, I would hope that we'd have a traffic engineer or somebody from DPW who's gonna sort of put their stamp of approval on that and back that claim up.
We can probably
Get
add
ourselves in
language
trouble if
that
we're-
specifies who determines
Yeah, we've got to
that.
be, as objective as possible if we're going to make that determination. Not that the zoning administrator wouldn't be, but I think
Right.
you've got to have that,
Doesn't hurt to lay it
additional.
out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're just setting ourselves up for
Yeah.
trouble from a business owner or somebody who says, well, wait a minute, everything's fine.
Yeah, I disagree with your assessment.
Yeah, so we're just going to have to tighten that one up a little bit, but I understand where it's going. Makes sense.
Thank you.
And is there anything in here, now that these could be relocated other places than where they, it should be within 25 feet, but 25 feet of what? I mean, let's say there's 4 signs. Is it 25 feet of any of those signs?
One of them,
Of
yeah.
one of them. I don't know the situations. I've been looking at billboards going up and down the road the last couple days, couple weeks. But there might be a unique situation where there's a house there, there's a business there.
Right.
Would there be something in there, if this would go through, that would allow that person to say, no, this is a light issue with me? Or how do we determine that individually, that it would be? I know the Board of Zoning Appeals decides if something's worse off somewhere else. I don't know how they decide that. But is there a way to look at those individual concerns that would affect an owner, a property owner, a homeowner?
Let me see here. Well, just on your question of the 25 feet, it is within 25 feet of one of the signs that's subject to the consolidation.
So not
but of
necessarily the
course,
biggest sign. It could be
you
the
at least
littlest.
have 2 choices, if not more than that, to address.
But you hear what I'm saying, I mean, you have a lot of little signs, and they're sort of spread out. So it could be in the, 100 yards from the little sign versus where the big sign that you think is getting consolidated.
Right. I can look into that. My gut instinct is that there's probably in the general process for approving signs, period, there's an opportunity to address whether that's an appropriate
I
location.
mean, if this goes through, I guess we're looking at what's the least offensive to an adjoining property owner if you have a choice in an area.
Right.
And is
Just
there-
for
is-
clarification, Kelly did bring it to my attention right now that any application for consolidation relocation has to be presented to adjoining property owners, and then there is room for a public hearing within that process.
And I would just assume that we're going to use the same communication method that we haven't formally formalized this yet, but using the best communication method possible, which is our local one. Reading the paper, I've never seen this stuff in the newspaper. I read the paper every day. But it's, putting it out there so people can really comment on it. If there is a denial by the zoning administrator, is there an appeal process?
Yes.
And is there an appeal process for an acceptance as well? Like if they say it's okay, can a person come in and say, no, we don't like it there, we want to appeal it because it's in
Yeah,
there? Okay.
any decision is
Both-
appealable.
And it's appealable to?
Board of Zoning.
Board of Zoning.
And what is, one of my issues right now with the Board of Zoning Appeals is just what is their criteria for accept or denial of something? I mean, because right now they're using, is it better off here? I mean,
Depends on what they're hearing.
Okay.
So that would be for a conditional use that's set forth by state, the Schultz versus Pritz case. If they're hearing an appeal from an administrative official, then they, or the planning commission, then they quote unquote sit in the seat of that, and they base it on the criteria that the same official would base it on. So in
They
this
could,
case,
they could say that it could be better within that place, it could be a better place if someone has an issue with it.
Could.
And again, this is just assuming that the folks want to do this. I'm just getting into the details of when it occurs.
Yep.
If and when it occurs.
yeah, details are important.
All right. Somebody want to make a motion? You want me to make a motion?
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Krabs.
I make a motion that we direct staff to schedule a public hearing for proposed amendments to County Code Section 158, 115, off-the-premise signs, billboards, and 158, 113, general regulations.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? So carried.
Can I ask if the board would mind a slight delay in that, so maybe we could set up that informational session that Daphne suggested, that we could have, invite the general public, but specifically the folks in the Finksburg area.
Oh, you were talking about doing that separate?
Yes.
Yeah. Timing is up to you guys.
Do we need a motion for that?
No,
Okay.
just as long as you don't mind. It would delay the public hearing. Normally, we'd be back in 2-3 weeks, so it'd just be delaying that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next, approval to submit application and acceptance of award for Coordinated Community Supports Partnership, or CSP Hub.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. How is everybody today?
Great, how are you?
Doing well, thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm gonna take your lead. We're gonna get started. And good morning again. I'm Celine Steckel, the Director of Citizen Services, and I'm joined this morning, I'll go left to right, I'm with Addison Ettlinger. She is our hub coordinator for the local management board. We also are joined by Marie Liddick. She's with the local behavioral health authority with the health department. And then Ed Singer he's our local management board manager. And we also have some other folks in the audience with us today as well that we will introduce to you for our next item. But we wanted to come before you today for approval to submit the application and acceptance of the award for the Coordinated Community Supports Partnership and the hub. And so we had come before you a little over a year ago to request approval from the Community Health Resource Commission to begin the process to become a pilot hub. And as we did that, we have taken a lot more steps over the past year to move towards becoming an actual hub. And I'm going to turn it over to Ed so he can walk you through what we've done, where we are, and why we're requesting your authority today.
And I'm going to try to be as brief as I can because I know you guys are running a little bit behind. So there's a whole process with this, and we weren't expecting this year that we were going to be actually selecting the providers, but the whole point of having a hub is that we get to, under the blueprint model for the consortium, we get to select behavioral health providers that support our public school system and trying to help with behavioral health interventions in the schools. We've spent the past year working closely with the community and the school system and all of our partners to identify where the priorities should be. We worked really hard with with procurement, the health department, the school system, the LMB all together to put together an RFP this year so that we took the proposals, we did an evaluation, our LBHA, Local Behavioral Health Authority, and the LMB were involved in evaluating the applications we received, and the school system provided letters of support for those programs that they wanted to see funding. And I think we have a good slate of programs that we're going to recommend, and I'm going to let Addison and Marie talk about that a little bit. But moving into the second year as a full consortium hub, we'll be responsible for selecting the programs. We'll send those down to the Community Health Resources Commission for funding if you all approve what we're asking to be approved today. They ultimately will decide how much funding we get. So we're not at a point yet where we're asking for concurrence on these as contracts, but this is what we're proposing to the CHRC. They'll come back and tell us how much funding we'll get. We'll work that out, and then we'll come back with procurement to talk to you all about getting concurrence on passing the grant funding through us. It doesn't cost the county anything, but the funding gets passed through the LMB to the providers, and we'll be responsible for the oversight. And that's why our affiliation with the Local Behavioral Health Authority is so important, because they're the experts in the programming, and they're going to help us with monitoring the programs that we're putting in place. So that's kind of where we are leading up to this point. I don't think I need to go into it in any further detail, but when we get those, ultimately when we get our funding amount back, we'll come back to you with procurement and ask for approval to essentially award the funding to these providers. So, Addison?
I'm just going to go over the providers that we selected and kind of give you just an overview of what they're going to provide for us. So the first one is Shepherd Pratt. They're going to provide some comprehensive school-linked behavioral health services. They're anticipating serving up to approximately 100 students. And that is going to include individual and family therapy, rapid psychiatric access, early intervention, medication management, and safety planning. For Carroll County Youth Service Bureau, they are going to provide us a program called Family Connect. And that program is going to provide some intensive wraparound services and in-home family therapy for approximately 30 high-risk students and families. That they're going to use an evidence-based family-centered treatment model. And these services are focusing on stabilizing family functioning, improving youth behavioral health outcomes, and delivering the evidence-based in-home services. Our third provider is going to be Advanced Behavioral Health in their program called CC STARS. CC STARS is a truancy program, so they are going to focus on students experiencing school refusal or chronic absenteeism, and they are expected to serve approximately 50 students. These services include trauma-informed therapy, family engagement, and coordination with school staff to address the behavioral health barriers that are impacting their school attendance. And lastly will be Boys and Girls Club for their Positive Action program. So that program delivers some prevention and social emotional learning programming using their Positive Action curriculum and is expected to serve approximately 630 students through their after-school and summer programming. Those services are going to focus on building resilience, emotional regulation, and positive decision-making skills to help prevent our escalation of behavioral health concerns. So together, these providers are projected to serve about 810 students across Carroll County.
Marie, is there anything, I guess just with the process or where we see ourselves going next year that you wanted to add? I'm glad to have you here with us. Just want to give you an opportunity to add anything you wanted to add.
Glad to be here. So the Local Behavioral Health Authority has the responsibility of overseeing all of the behavioral health providers in the county that receive Medicaid dollars, that bill for Medicaid services. So it really was a great fit that we partner with LMB on this to provide the oversight and monitoring of the selected providers through the RFP process and selection process. We've worked closely with the LMB. I am a member of the board. And we do have that expertise also in some of the early childhood systems of care, so we thought it was a really good fit for us to partner. In other jurisdictions, other local behavioral health authorities have been the ones to actually write the application and partner with the LMB. So in this instance, the LMB wrote us in as partners for this grant.
Yeah. And the reason we did that last year, we had a discussion about that, was we already had a board in place that really was set up to function in the governance model that the Community Health Resources Commission wanted to see. So I think that's it for our presentation. If y'all have any questions, we'll be glad to try to answer them.
I have a couple, actually. So my understanding is the Connecting Youth program is ending as of July 1. I know the state was looking at different priorities, correct?
Well, that's us looking at different priorities as an LMB. It's not at all related to this this proposal that we have here today. That's related to the community partnership agreement. When we come back to you, I'll be coming to see you sometime before April. We just got that application yesterday, and it had a lot to do with priorities and things. But it's not that I don't want to answer your question now, but that would be more appropriately answered when we talk about the source of funding
I
that was funding that
understand that.
program.
But I guess my question and concern is this. Carroll County Public Schools had highlighted that one of their main priorities was homelessness. Currently, that program that's going to be phased out serves individuals 16 to 24, as you know. I'm aware of a couple individuals that are currently in that program that will be phased out of that program. So we're going to have homeless individuals because we're phasing this out. I'm not really certain how that's benefiting the community. I'm a little concerned about that specifically.
Right.
Also, I'm kind of curious, we're looking at a significant amount of money to Shepherd Pratt. Were there any other programs that would have assisted with the youth between the ages of 18 and, I know we don't really consider them youth as legal adults, but 18 to 24, were there any other submissions?
Well, there were other submissions, and there were we reviewed them, and we used the scoring matrix that we developed with our procurement folks. This grant is specifically the consortium grant is specifically focused on behavioral health needs. It's hard to put a homelessness services program into an RFP that is specifically for behavioral health supports. So it wouldn't be appropriate in under this grant to look at something that supports homelessness. Now, as we get into discussion about the CPA, we do have a rapid youth rehousing program that is funded through the CPA as well, that supports those youth and does a lot of the things that are, and I think probably a lot of the clients that are served by the Connecting Youth program are also served by our rapid rehousing program. Now, generally, we're looking 18 and above there, 18 to 25. But again, specifically, we got a total of 7 submissions. We're probably asking for more funding than what the consortium is going to give us, so we're probably going to have to do some more trimming. But the submissions that we got, there was at least one submission that was an incomplete application, and there was one submission that was a duplicate of one of the services that we're recommending for funding, and then there was another one that dealt with homeless students, but that really doesn't fit with what the consortium's request for proposals is. And if we sent that down to CHRC for funding, they would likely come back to us and tell us that we're not able to fund that because it doesn't meet their criteria.
I mean, I guess my question would be, couldn't homelessness be a behavioral health issue that would lead to that? I mean, we see that with adults, we see that with kids. And also, what are we doing about those we're leaving behind as of July 1?
I don't think we're going to leave anybody behind, and again, we can get into discussing how it's not under this source of funding, but we do have a youth rapid rehousing program where we're picking up a lot of those youth anyway and connecting them. A lot of the behavioral health resources that we're funding are things that are going to help folks with those. They're going to provide them the treatment to help make them well, and you can argue that housing first or other things as far as how you approach it. The question is where the priorities are. We don't have unlimited funding, and we've got to look at where the priorities fall. I do think we'll have supports for those folks that are homeless.
Now,
we're certainly going to continue to run our youth action board and do what we can there. But
out of the additional, I just want to ask, were any of the other ones that you don't have on this list, were any of those supported by Carroll County Public Schools?
yes, but the problem is that and actually we weren't, because of the procurement rules, we really weren't able to look at the list of what was supported by Carroll County, their priorities. We knew where their priorities were because we communicate with them regularly. But I know Shepherd Pratt was their top priority with what the, and these are kind of laid out. And I believe they're in we've talked to the school system about this since then, and they're happy with the priorities that we're presenting to you today. They feel like with knowing the amount of funding that we could potentially get from the consortium, that this met what their prioritized list was. So even though we went through an independent process, we're aligned with what the school system wants. The biggest thing they've wanted for the last several years is this connection with Shepherd Pratt, because they feel like they have students with intensive needs that are not being met, and it's causing problems with the kids being able to be successful in school.
Okay, thank you.
I do think another piece to this, though, is that there could be opportunities through some of our other grants that are coming with the funding from the CRF funds. That could be an opportunity for that program to also maybe seek funding through there. So there are going to be other opportunities potentially for funding, and we're trying to be very collaborative with folks that have applied to make sure that they know, and that we're looking also with them at what other opportunities may exist. Because you are correct, we have needs out there, and we don't want to lose anyone in this process. And we will work with programs that may not be funded at the capacity they were before to make sure we're not losing any of those individuals. And we are providing them opportunities in other areas or other programs that we're developing. So understand we're all at the table talking about these things, and it's not easy to pivot and make these changes sometimes that we're making. It's very hard. But we have to look at where the priorities and the needs are right now, and making some of those shifts so that we can make a better system. And so, not that a program is bad, but a program may have not been, it's not where it needs to be to fit the exact need we're seeing now, because things shift and change over time, and we want to make sure that we're capturing all the youth and families with as much support as we can with the funding we have available.
Okay, thank you.
If you don't get the 3.1 million, what is it going to be close, or do you think they could cut it by a quarter, or who knows?
We really don't know. We do know, I think it was what they give, do you remember the amount they gave last year?
2.8.
2.8 million is what was provided last year. We expect it might be a little bit more than that this year. And it could be that we go back and we may have to negotiate with one or two of the proposals to say, hey, can you trim this down a little bit? We'd like to try to keep all four. I mean, if they came back and said, we're cutting $600,000 off of your proposals, that's a different thing than if they come back and say, you need to trim $200,000 or $300,000. So we may have more flexibility if it's a little bit. If it's a lot, we may have to trim a whole program.
Any other thoughts, comments, or discussion from the board? Is there a motion?
On the back.
I move the Board of County Commissioners approve the submission of the Community Supports Partnership Hub grant application and accept the award. I'm optimistic.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thanks, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Up next,
Nice tie.
up next, approval for.
Better than our attorneys.
Oh. I don't think Tim, did you hear him?
What's wrong with your tie?
He seems a little colorful all of a sudden, kind of red.
Up next, approval for renewal and acceptance of award for the Federal 2025 Continuum of Care.
I'll never beat this morning's shirt, though.
I know.
Never.
You could. Did he tell you where to buy one?
Scotty,
That thing was awesome.
you can be in the hot seat, right?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Back before you again, we are here for approval to renew and the acceptance of our award for the Federal 2025 Continuum of Care. I want to start by saying I'm joined today by Scott Yard, who is the current CEO with HSP, Human Services Programs, Inc. of Carroll County, and also with Carly Long. She's our Continuum of Care, she's our coordinator. I wanted to throw HUB in there. I'm all still on the last agenda item. And then we also have Jenny Grable. She is also with HSP. And then Debbie Standiford with our grants office. Scott Yard has decided to move on from HSP, so we wanted to acknowledge his years of service with HSP today. And Jenny is in the incoming acting role in the interim for that agency. So we wanted to just acknowledge Scott while we're here before you with this grant approval.
And I have a couple comments I wanted to mention about Mr. Yard. So began work at HSP in April of 2016 as the Director of Emergency Services. In July of 2018, served as the interim CEO. December of 2018, appointed as the CEO and has served since then. Annually, HSP serves thousands of residents. In 2025 alone, HSP supported almost 7,500 individuals, 421 homeless in shelter, 6,010 individuals with energy assistance, 2,270 children, and 2,186 senior citizens. The biggest achievement being the restructuring of the shelter system to allow for year-round night-by-night services so that no one in Carroll County has to sleep outside except for those that choose to, which we do, as we mentioned earlier this morning, have some individuals that choose to have their own outside location. And I have to say congratulations. Wish you the best in the future. Obviously, you've put a lot of time and energy and effort into the community, and I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving into the reason that we're here, other than to say goodbye and farewell to Scott, it has been a great partnership working with you for sure. Lots of good work together. But as you all know, we had come before you a little bit ago to give you an update about the COC NOFA because HUD had pushed out a new NOFA, which required us to apply again, even though last year we were granted a 2-year award, which was to go through this fiscal year as well. But with the new administration, they pushed out a new award, and that we would have to reapply competitively, and the projects that would have been eligible would have been different projects than we currently have with our housing continuum. So there were several lawsuits filed, national lawsuits. Maryland went in on some of those, the National Alliance to End Homelessness as well. And through that, there were injunctions that were put into place. And so now HUD has reissued that they are not issuing the new NOFA, but they are going back and that we can just renew our existing projects. And so that is where we are now today. So we are in preparation to do that. And so we wanted to come before you to get your approval to renew the projects that are existing under the NOFA that we had submitted last year. So, and there is a requirement for a county match for those awards. And part of that match, that match that we request, we actually do request that in the operating budget for FY27. So that has already been submitted as part of our operating request because we know that every year. But I did want to go back and just do a little history about what our COC is, our continuum of care. It's, and the mission of that is to empower all citizens of Carroll County to be self-sufficient, have stable housing, and a safe, healthy life by maximizing our community collaboration. And the Circle of Caring Homelessness Board is our board that meets every other month, but we're engaging with each other around the clock, really, because it's all the people that care, it's all the nonprofits, it's all the governmental partners, it's faith-based individuals, it's law enforcement, it's health department, it's everyone is at the table talking about how can we end homelessness in Carroll County and beyond. And it really takes that compassion and a community approach to get this work done. We, as the county, can't do it by ourselves. With our nonprofit providers, we can't do it by ourselves. It takes everybody to be at that table to talk about solutions, because sometimes, especially as we learned in this snowstorm, we can't do it all sometimes. We need to have other people helping out, community pulling in to help shovel people's sidewalks and other things as well. And it just really is, Carroll County has a great network of supports that all pull together to get this work done. So I do want to specify that the projects that we are continuing on with would be our coordinated entry, which HSP does provide us with that service. And then also our permanent supportive housing, where we serve about 34 individuals in housing and help with subsidizing their rent for that program. And then also there's a planning piece for our citizen services staff to help with the planning component of that. The total amount of county match would be $50,037. The total grant award is $641,797 for a total of $691,834. I did also want to just note that we recently had our point-in-time homelessness count. Commissioner Kyler was able to attend, as well as Mayor Miller from Tawnytown and the Mayor Pro Tem. And certainly, I know all of you were very involved and aware of it as well, and Roberto and Deb also attended with us. We do have some preliminary numbers from the point-in-time count, which is a count where we go out into the community and we have an unsheltered count and a sheltered count. The unsheltered count is where we are trying to make sure that we know where everyone that is living unsheltered, street homeless in our county are, and that we are engaging with them. We've encountered 17 adults from 15 households. 2 were veterans, 6 were chronically homeless. There were 3 older adults over the age of 60, and then 1 unaccompanied youth aged 22. And so with that, we knew those individuals before we encountered them, which was the good thing. We have an outreach team, which is comprised of multiple agencies and their staff that go out on a weekly, if not daily basis to work with folks, trying to encourage them to come in for services, help them understand. We also, a big point of this is to understand how they became homeless. Why are they continuing in homelessness if we have a night-by-night shelter that they could come to every night? Why are they choosing not to? How can we help them get to a place where they want to seek shelter so we can help to stabilize them and then work on the next steps to stability into housing and employment if that's something they're able to do. So that's kind of where the point-in-time count was. And I think it was a great success just to we had more people that participated as volunteers this year, almost 40 individuals, to really raise awareness and highlight the work that we do, but also how we want to help these folks become, engaged in our community. We want them to be participants and have a stable life. So, Scott or Jenny, anybody, Carly, any comments?
No, I would just say, and with what Celine was saying with partnership, HSP and all the various partners are very thankful for the support from the county, because we can't operate, much like you all can't do it by yourselves, we can't do it either. So the support that you offer allows us and several other nonprofits to carry out our missions as well. So thank you.
Scott, thank you for everything that you've done for this county as well, and I wish you the best in your next endeavors, and God bless.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Scott.
I move the Board of Commissioners approve approve the submission of the 2025 Continuum of Care Renewal and accept the award.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very
you.
much. Up next, approval to submit an application and acceptance of the award for Rural Health Transformation Program Grant, Whole Blood Enhancement Program. Chief, good to see you.
Chief.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm the last person, I believe, on this part of your agenda, so I'll try to be brief. We have come across the availability of a grant, and we'd like approval to submit application and acceptance of the award under what's known as the Rural Health Transformation Program grant, and specifically a Whole Blood Enhancement Program. The federal government is making available through Health and Human Services several billions of dollars that are provided throughout the country to do some enhancements of rural health care. And specific to Maryland, the Department of Health, in concert with the Maryland Institute of Emergency Medical Services Systems, is making this available to rural jurisdictions. And Carroll County has qualified as being one of those jurisdictions. This would be 5-year funding through the Rural Health Transformation Program, and this would enhance our current program of what's known as low titer O-positive blood. In May of 2025, we became an additional jurisdiction. In Maryland, there's only about 4 programs, and those are gaining traction throughout the region. And what we're doing currently, we have an agreement with the Inova healthcare system out of Northern Virginia. So what happens is the shelf life of this blood is about 2 weeks, and we have a contract, they come from Northern Virginia and bring it. What you can see in your document is the grant would allow us to do a number of things. We currently have 2 of our lieutenants that are in an off-duty capacity. We compensate with overtime to be our whole blood program managers, which is required under the state criteria. So this would fund that in total over the next 5 years. Annual training for all of our EMS supervisor lieutenants and our 4 battalion chiefs. We would actually get a vehicle that would increase our capacity for whole blood in terms of transporting within the region whole blood in a refrigerated vehicle. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to actually seek and hopefully get accreditation under what's known as the American Association of Blood Banks. This is the same national organization that credentials hospital blood banks, so it would allow Carroll County to actually become a physical blood bank. And what that means is we would be able to store larger quantities of blood, and we wouldn't have to rely on a hospital system. We would be able to do this internally with less frequency of having to deal with the logistics of them coming from Northern Virginia. And the other thing we would do is this would add to our capability for mass casualty response. Should we get a significant multi-patient accident, an active assailant event, this would provide additional whole blood immediately, and we've already qualified that that is a life-saving treatment. And this would also fund some additional equipment for the daily demands of that system. So you have a breakdown over 5 years. The total amount of this grant would be $911,311, and there is $0 for a county match. We would be working with Deb Standiford, obviously, and the grant section to procure this, and we've already begun working on our grant submission. So there's a high probability that we would receive this.
One question, what is the cost that we would then absorb? Would it be the 900,000 or so?
Yes.
Moving forward, okay.
That's 5-year total.
Yeah.
So it's an expansion of the program. So
Yes,
we-
it's basically an expansion of what we're already doing, and we believe that after the 5 years, with the enhancement, that we would expand it probably to other units beyond our supervisors and our battalion chiefs, and so this would give us the increased capacity, and ultimately over the 5-year period, those functions, that equipment would be absorbed, and it would ultimately become a budgetary thing beyond that, but all costs would be covered annually until then.
And just for anybody watching, this has been not only an exceptional program because it's very limited within the state of Maryland, but you all have been using it very successfully
Yes.
out in the field. So
We've
just
had, I believe now, 19 utilizations of that, and we have people actually that are alive today that would not have been alive. And not only is it useful for trauma, but we've had several medical patients, GI bleeds. We recently had an elderly gentleman that fell on a table, and our paramedics were quick to point out that that patient was going into severe hemorrhagic shock. They met our supervisor car on the way to Sinai Hospital, and now Sinai is getting involved. We got about a 2-page letter from their trauma surgical team, and now they're working with local media to try to get some PR about what we're doing here in Carroll County. And so we're also working with several jurisdictions, notably Baltimore County and Anne Arundel County, much larger jurisdictions that have actually come here to emulate our program. So we're basically the pioneers within the Baltimore region, us in Howard County, for doing this program.
Just know, if you expand the program, it would be difficult, if not possible, to retract it 5 years from now
Sure.
when these costs become yours. That's
Well, and the way that it makes it most possible is if you keep track of the data of
Yes.
how many people it served and how many people's lives it saved, and that helps to support your claim for all these grants.
Yeah, certainly hope we get it. Nobody deserves it more than we do. I've mentioned it a few times up here before. The story and what's taken place here the last 3 years, particularly with EMS, is truly outstanding. The Department of Fire and EMS, and working in conjunction with our volunteer fire companies on multiple programs, including this one, the work that you've done, Dr. Stephanie Kemp, Chief Eric Zaney, just some amazing people. And
But
it's a story that certainly needs to be told. I really hope we get this. I'm going to put a member of the audience on the spot a little bit. Ms. Carey, we need a story on this. This is amazing. So we've talked about it before. But yeah, it's really extraordinary what's taken place. And I'm really glad to see that this could be a possibility, because I just can't imagine something we actually might need. I mean, we really do need this. So I hope we get it.
Yes, and it's been a team effort, and beyond Dr. Kemp and Chief Zaney, we've got several of our lieutenants that are currently our program managers for this, younger members of the department, and their level of enthusiasm with this is really off the charts. And
incredible.
Again, it's a life-saving capability that we have, and not everyone in Maryland has this. So Carroll County is unique, and we're among the pioneers for this level of care.
And sometimes just telling the story of a person who it impacted is helpful as well, just
Yes.
to bring attention to the real person that's saved by it.
I move the Board of County Commissioners approve the submission of the 5-year Rural Health Transformation Program grant and accept the award.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
Up next, we will move into the public comment portion of the agenda. Roberta, do we have anybody here for public comment?
Two, Ms. Bergman, if you go to the microphone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Board of County Commissioners. My name is Diana Bergman. I'm a candidate. However, today I'm here to speak as a parent of 2 students in Carroll County Public Schools. I reside in Eldersburg, Sykesville, and I've been very busy, not just in Carroll County, but I've also traveled to Annapolis. I do agree. I definitely do not want to lose my congressional and good friend, Johnny Olszewski. When I lived in Baltimore County, Johnny helped our community secure $164 million to replace Lansdowne High School. The start of that capital project would have never begun if it wasn't for Johnny allocating the feasibility study in Lansdowne High School. It was the first ever county executive budget that he proposed, and he made the commitment for Lansdowne High School. So my children are once again attending a school that needs a feasibility study. Liberty High School was constructed in the early 80s. The current blueprint is very outdated, with classrooms the size of cheese slices. The functional space is just about extremely limited, and we have permanent learning cottages outside. During the cold winter months, it's not ideal nor safe, as students and educators have to commute in and out of the icy temperatures of the building. The cafeteria space for students to socialize and eat meals, which is a multi-level space, can use an update that's more ADA friendly. While I understand my children will never walk the halls of a new state-of-the-art education building, I still believe in advocating for affordable methods to improve education system. $19,000 was the cost of the feasibility study for Towson High School a few years ago. Starting sooner than later is not only reasonable, but you're keeping your promise made to multiple community members years ago. As for the operating budget of Carroll County Public Schools, I did speak during the budget hearing, and I made the recommendation that Carroll County Public Schools should consider leasing their devices versus purchasing them as they currently do, because it's not feasible. Other suggestions to resolve the challenges is to review outdated processes to cut the costs instead of closing the outdoor school and cutting music, arts, and athletic programs. Other great savings is starting middle school and high school after 8 a.m. There is data supporting when students start their school day after 8 a.m. it improves not only their academic performance, but their ability to concentrate and stay attentive throughout the school day. It supports students' need to have consistent structure schedule to achieve their behavioral goals needs. It also improves attendance and it shows the saving on the operating budget for schools because since students are improving academically, the population of students needing additional supports does decrease. I encourage the Board of Commissioners to revisit federal grants to address needed improvement to infrastructure, such as public roads and resurfacing projects. We have a ton of resources still available related to the federal government that provides grants for jurisdictions such as Carroll County, which still is considered rural communities. Those projects can provide relief for county funds and be dedicated to other capital improvement projects such as school infrastructure and overall operational school budgets. Thank you for your patience and the opportunity to participate during public comments.
Thank you very much.
And Ms. Hardesty.
Good afternoon.
Morning, Commissioners. My name's Amy Hardesty, and I live in Eldersburg, and I have a very brief comment today. I want to thank the Carroll County and state road crews for clearing our roads. I have seen numerous posts in other counties, and I am proud to live here, and I am proud of what our fellows have done. My neighborhood was cleared before some main roads in our area, so I just want to say thank you to those road crews for being out there in this crazy cold weather doing that hard work. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you, you too.
Thank you very much.
Agree with that.
Chris, do we have anybody on the phone for public comment?
Yes, sir. We do have a caller. If you could use *6, please identify yourself and give us your address where you're calling from today. Thank you.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, Commissioners. It started out as morning, and that's fine. Catherine Adelaide, one of 9 members of the Carroll County Republican Central Committee, keeping Carroll conservative. I always like to start out and thank you all, the board and the staff. I really love the great info that's coming on before you begin. The opportunity to, find out, get more information. Again, I really am finding these meetings more and more to be very thoughtful, very thorough, very transparent. I really do appreciate the efforts being made to take public comment, to get the public involved. This is your world, but people are just really struggling out there. And so don't think they don't care. A lot of times they just don't know. So that effort is greatly appreciated by me, who represents at least some of them. Okay, moving on to Carroll County Republican Central Committee news. Of course, our big upcoming event is the legislative breakfast, Saturday, February 28th. My understanding that you'll all be there, except Commissioner Kyler will be out of town. We will miss you. So we appreciate that you're going to be there. We're going to have a pro-life table. I think we registered 15 new members for Carroll County Right to Life. So we'll be there with our big banner, which was in the National Right for Life. I helped carry that with the president of that. Thank you for supporting our delegates, including the letter on redistricting. That's part of election integrity. So the letter is great. It's not too much in my personal opinion. And thank you for coming to the breakfast. We still have seats left, so people keep signing up. It's a really great way to support our legislators in Annapolis who fight an uphill battle every single day. Thank you for mentioning District 5 night this Monday, February 9th from 5:30 to 7:30. There's other fundraisers you can find out more about at ccgop.net. And we put the fun in the fundraisers. So get out there and support our candidates. Our next meeting is Thursday, February 26th, 2026 at the Senior Center at 6:30 p.m. I also had the opportunity, our newest member, Dawn Nee Esquire, is been appointed to the MDGOP Platform Committee, and they had an opportunity to send her comments about the platform that they're drafting. And so I'm going to send you a copy of that. It's too long for me to go through, but basically it was pro-life, the drug, specifically pot, and election integrity were the items that I focused on in our platform. The central committees are also encouraged to create their own platforms. The platform is the values that we operate off of that distinguish us from other political groups. And then finally, I'll take a minute about the weather. I hope everybody will be watching the opening ceremonies of the Winter Olympics. Go Team USA. My Olympic sport has been ice sledding with my grandchildren here in Carroll County, having a great time. So thank you for the opportunity and have a great weekend.
Thank you very much. Chris, do we have anybody else on the phone?
That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody up here have anything for administrative open?
I do have just one thing.
sir.
And I know part of this will be a discussion for budget, but I want to just bring it up today. As somebody that's grown up in this community, and I've gotten a quality education here, I thought, as commissioners, we obviously are enacted, with the budget, we obviously, fund the school system, we're involved in all this. But I thought, maybe we should look at considering taking it a little step further in a different way. And I know Commissioner Krebs, you did this when you were in Annapolis as a delegate. The delegation, each member has scholarships. So what I was going to just mention today, I'm not suggesting we have to make a decision today, but just something to consider. I'd like to see if the board would consider taking $5,000 from the commissioner's budget and giving each commissioner $1,000 per district, of which we would create our own criteria, and then we would award a high school student that from that amount.
Scholarship.
You could take it out. The commissioners, the county already does give scholarships to Carroll Community College for students. So just the thought, we could talk about it more, just so you know.
I'm going to just say, it's a great idea. We used to get about 60,000, 65,000 to give out. It's a ton of work, even for that. I'm just telling you, for $1,000, you're going to have a lot of work.
Oh, I know.
I mean, it's, you got to make it meaningful. We used to get twice of what it costs to go to room and board and tuition to University of Maryland, so that keeps going up, whatever that is. I mean, it could be up 70, 75. So it's substantial, and it was still difficult. I had a whole committee that worked on it. So it's not simple.
And I'm aware of that. And I think you and I both have served on Boys and Girls Club for the scholarships over there. And it's a tough job to pick somebody after you put out the criteria. But I just think given, the economic difficulties as we're all facing, and definitely people that are taking their kids or going to higher education, especially people that are investing in our community, I just thought it was something we should all consider.
Well, thank you very much, Commissioner Gordon. Is there anything from anybody else? Well, we'll move into agenda review then, and I'll do my best to move through this as rapidly as possible because I know our time is rapidly diminishing. Wanda, good afternoon. How are you?
Good.
All right, so first week, Monday, February 9th, 2026, District 5 night in Annapolis. Commissioners Kyler and Krebs will be, I think, all of us except for, we're all attending, I think, right?
Yeah, well, I think we're all. Okay. Mike, are you attending?
I don't know.
Okay, so 6 o'clock p.m., Rural Counties Coalition with Commissioner Kyler. On Tuesday, February 10th, County Commissioners closed administrative session followed by open. Item number 1, budget topics, Department of Management and Budget. And then that's at 8:30 a.m. And then at 7 o'clock p.m., Ag Center Board meeting, but I cannot make that due to a work commitment. Then Wednesday, February 11th, MACO Education Subcommittee with Commissioner Kyler. 9:30 a.m., MACO Legislative Committee with Commissioner Kyler. Noon, State of the State Address with Commissioner Kyler. 1 o'clock p.m., State of the State Luncheon with Commissioner Kyler. And then 5 o'clock p.m., MACO Legislative Reception with Commissioners Gordon, Kyler, and Krebs. Thursday, February 12th, 8 o'clock a.m., Board of County Commissioners closed administrative session. 9 o'clock a.m., Board of County Commissioners open session at 9. Item number 1, Priority Carroll. Item number 2, Legislative Update. Item number 3, Spending Authority for Medical Supplies for the Department of Fire and EMS, followed by Public Comment, Administrative Open, Agenda Review, and then at 1 o'clock p.m. we will be reconvening for a joint meeting with the Emergency Services Advisory Council. Friday, February 13th shows nothing. Saturday, February 14th shows nothing. Sunday, February 15th, Commissioner Kyler has the podcast. Are there any corrections, additions, or amendments to the first week of the agenda? Second week, Monday, February 16th, Rural Counties Coalition with Commissioner Kyler. Tuesday, February 17th at 9 o'clock a.m., Planning and Zoning with Commissioner Gordon. 2 o'clock p.m., Veterans Advisory Meeting with Commissioners Gordon and Kyler. Wednesday, February 18th, 9:30 a.m., MACO Education Subcommittee with Commissioner Kyler. 10 o'clock a.m., MACO Legislative Committee with Commissioner Kyler. 5 o'clock p.m., Carroll County Community College Board of Trustees meeting with Commissioner Kyler. 7 o'clock p.m., Emergency Services Advisory Council with Commissioner Guerin. Thursday, February 19th, 8 o'clock a.m., Board of County Commissioners closed administrative, followed by open at 9 o'clock a.m. Item 1, priority Carroll. Item number 2, legislative update. Item number 3, update on the Police Accountability Board and Administrative Charging Committee and recommendation for change to the current Police Accountability Resolution. Item number 4, proposed amendments to Chapter 158 for a temporary deferral on data processing centers.
Mr. President, I believe that's a
Yes.
public hearing.
Oh, I apologize. Did I miss that?
Wanda, that's a public hearing.
Okay, public,
yeah.
right. I apologize. It does not say that. I apologize. My fault.
No, they should need to change it, I think. Make a public hearing.
Okay.
You read it right.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much,
thank
Tim. I
you.
appreciate that. No, seriously, thank you.
Yeah.
Item number 5, briefing Chapter 156 on concurrency management report for FY25. Item number 6, approval of resolution for the 2025 fall amendment to the 2023 Carroll County Water and Sewer Master Plan, followed by public comment, administrative session open, followed by agenda review, and then we will be going into closed for legal relating to technology services.
Commissioner,
Yes.
is that, Roberta, is that more of a cybersecurity briefing as opposed to legal?
It is closed, I think.
Yeah, that's the wrong.
That's closed for cybersecurity.
So it should say cybersecurity instead of technology
Oh.
services.
Actually, no. No, this is not. No.
Okay.
So it's correct the way that it is written?
It is.
Okay.
It is.
And are item 5 and 6 both public comment, or are they hearings as well? On the concurrency management and.
Number 6 is a decision on the hearing you've already had, so
Okay.
that should not have public comment. And because the record and the comment period will be closed by then, if it's not already closed. And the concurrency management report is just a report. Is that what you're asking about?
Okay, yeah, so, yes.
Friday, February 4th at 4 o'clock p.m., the Wakefield Valley Park Event Center ribbon cutting with Commissioner Gordon
I'll be there as well.
and Commissioner Krebs. Saturday, February 21st shows nothing. Sunday, February 22nd, Commissioner Gordon has the podcast. Are there any alterations, amendments, or additions to week number 2? That being the case, I need a motion to go into recess until, should we say 1:15? Because we've got about 15 minutes before we would have to meet for our meeting with EAC.
Well, I'm sorry, what was the question?
Should we say 1:15 instead of 1 o'clock for meeting with EAC?
Sure.
They downstairs or here?
So moved.
Downstairs.
So moved. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are in recess.